Got it, man. Let's do it.
Hello. Hey,
what's up, everyone?
I was
Hey,
putting
Rob.
a face on purpose. Were you two Aaron, or was that you were just doing a thing?
That's just my normal face.
All right.
Doesn't get much different than this.
All right. Hey guys, welcome back to the third and what I think will ideally be our last session of going through some of the weather entries here. Once again, joined by Aaron and Mike. Hello, guys.
What's up, everyone?
Hi, Zach.
Hey. At this point, if those of you guys watching don't know Aaron and Mike, then go back and watch other videos or something. I don't know why you haven't seen those, or you don't know who they are at this point. But
we're just hanging out. We were walking through Korea, and Zach just picked us up. He said, "Here, come help you out."
Just pretend to know stuff about weathering, guys.
It's all scripted.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
So thank you to you guys again for helping out. And guys, if you want to check out Aaron and Mike's stuff, the links to their pages are down below. And let's just get right into it. So today we still got a bunch of entries to go through, but like I said, we want to try to finish through all of them today. So while we want to make sure we see all the entries, some of them we might be a little bit brief with today, guys. But if you've hopefully seen already part 1 and part 2, then you kind of know what we're looking for as far as like the judging. You kind of know what some of the common issues that we've seen with some of the builds are, what some of the common good things we've seen about some of the builds. So if we're a little bit brief with your guys' kit, just try to understand that we have lives and other things to do, other priorities, so we can't do too many of these videos, but we want to make sure we get through all of them. So we're going to start off and just jam through these today, hopefully. So here we go with the first one. All right. So this is the Zaku tank by Loki. And this is actually made from the SD cross silhouette Zaku, by the way. Okay. So kind of kitbash stuff going on
Zaku
here.
One head. Yeah.
Shall I kick us off?
Sure, go ahead.
Go for it.
Yep.
Cool. Cool little build. I quite like it. Probably I'd say just a bit heavy-handed on the rust work there. But it's not that it doesn't work. It's kind of got a narrative going about it, but maybe just to ease back on that rust work, bring down the scale a little bit, and I think you'd have a cracking little build there.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, it looks fun. Looks like you're having a good time with this one. Good little mix of kind of customization here. And I would say, along with Aaron, the one thing I would say is the rust is kind of the entirety of it, basically. So it probably was a little bit of a time crunch, or maybe even a skill crunch, but I like kind of where you go in the green shield and kind of the green waist, and the colors are really nicely done. And you've heard Loki so far through most of the conversation is just, restrain the size of the weathering into the scale of the piece. The chips are a little large, I think, for what this is supposed to be, but and then probably just back off the flash photography a bit, just work on the basic photo stuff. But yeah, no, it's fun. Looks good. Cool stuff.
Yeah. I agree. I think it was a fun concept, trying to make a kit that doesn't exist. And it's a pretty unique kind of piece of Xeon history there. So it's cool to see. And, it's got the shovel instead of your typical kind of rifle or axe or something. So it's interesting. It's a fun build, like you guys said. I think the creativity is there, and it seems pretty well executed as far as like the idea of it. It's just that the weathering is a bit heavy in certain areas, but yeah, it is quite nice. I agree.
Your technique is good though. Just tighten it up. Make them more.
Nice. Yeah, and just nice that it's just got it on a nice little simple base there. Also, I appreciate that he showed us the LEDs, but it wasn't the focus of all the photos. There's a couple of photos to show the LEDs, and then the rest of the photos are, even though it's flash photography, which is not ideal, we can see the kit pretty clearly. Mostly, it just would have been nice in some nice like outside, especially because it's so rusty and it's like it looks like a piece of construction equipment. If you took your photos outside, like put the kit in the dirt or something, and you get that nice outdoor light, it'd be a nice setting for some good photos of that.
You're on your way, my friend.
Yeah. It was a cool one. All right, the next one is a scope dog.
Scope dog. It's our first scope dog in the show, I think.
I believe so. I think there's 2 of them in total, and this is the first one of the 2 by Martin.
Yeah. I like the fact that I'm just going to roll.
Yep.
I like the fact that he's got a little Zimmerit on this and doing some things. This piece actually is, to me, like a transitional piece. I think you understand a lot of the basics of what you're doing here. There's some good technique. The chips are good. The weathering's good. Everything's where it should be. And I think you're in that kind of middle ground of you're moving forward with your skill sets here. Probably the negative here would be the kind of the black wash is kind of all over the piece a little bit. And you can probably play with your colors with your dark washes a bit more than you are. So don't be afraid to be bold, and you can kind of, and this is something I didn't really talk about too much for most of these pieces in general is start playing with asymmetry of left to rights, and they don't always have, the joints don't always have to be identically weathered between left and right sides of the machine. Those ideas there will help kind of expand the visuals out. But this one's a really nice little piece. Probably would have been a lot higher up the food chain, Martin. Just a little bit more refinement. The base probably isn't helping you ton with the really dark wet mud. I like it off of the base with the dry feet, if that makes sense. I like that look better. But there's some nice stuff here. I think this is a really good, you're coming on strong and you understand what you're doing. So, yeah.
Yeah. The one thing I did is if you look at components of this build in isolation, your technique is actually really proficient. And if you just kind of, I guess, without sounding cliche, practice a bit and just learn a bit of restraint there, you've actually got no problem with your technique. I just think it's in the execution. It's maybe a little bit overdone in parts and whatnot, but it definitely has some solid kind of base to it and to your technique. And I think like if you just keep doing it, like you've got everything you need to smash out a really amazing build. And you obviously understand, angles and light and photography. So that's a huge win as well. Your photography is pretty good. I'm assuming it's off a phone, but it's still pretty good. So good stuff. But yeah, I agree with Mike. I like the dry mud and stuff on the feet, everything. I don't think that base was kind of added much to it. I think it's pretty cool just like that on its own. It's pretty cool.
Just the only thing about these photos is that, again, like we've seen with a lot of them, they're quite wide, so you have a lot of empty space that it's just not really necessary. So like, as you see, I'm like zooming in to like, this is kind of what we really needed, or even closer like that on some of these. But also I would say it seemed like the hands are not weathered. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but it seems like maybe those were kind of left to the side, and like maybe it's the piece you kind of have to the side and you forget about it until the end. And you're like, oh crap, I forgot about that one.
Could have been a time thing.
So I'm not sure.
Could have been what we were talking about prior to the stream, Zach. They might have been weathered. You accidentally dropped thinner on them, so you had to paint them, and then like you forget to kind of weather them back with the rest of the company. There's a whole bunch of reasons. We've all been there, but yeah, they're definitely missing a bit of love there. So
Cool. All right. Next is also Martin, different Martin, and instead of a pretty obscure kit as far as the contest goes, it's a bit more of a very common kit as far as the contest goes, and it's the Barbatos here, the MG Barbatos, and a pretty cool color scheme.
I agree.
Yeah, Aaron, you want to go on this one?
Yeah, so I actually really like the color scheme. I think that's a really nice set of complementary colors. You've used them well. But in terms of the weathering on top of that, a lot of the stuff we've said before, quite hard to put that kind of stark rust contrast against that sort of deeper blue. I think you could have cut that down to about a third of the intensity and it would have worked a lot better. But yeah, good photos. We can get in nice and close and have a look, appreciate the actual real battle damage there. But just a note on that battle damage, if you're going to go to the effort of actually physically damaging the kit, then you have to you have to support it with the paint work that kind of brings that damage to life. You can't just paint over it, and even though it's real damage, it's got to kind of be still painted to be believable and whatnot. So, but yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, just wind back that rust. It's too intense for this sort of scale.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, this one, I wish we talked. I don't remember us talking as much about this one as maybe we might have could have. I like this one a lot, Martin. To be honest with you, I'm with Aaron on the color scheme in particular. We commented in the past on dark schemes about how the difficulty is to use them. This is a dark scheme that's used well. So props to that, Martin. The unification of the colors with the complementary pale blue-gray trim that isn't like garishly separated, really nicely handled in terms of your color scheme. And looking in close on these, the scoring marks that you're doing and what you're trying to attempt is actually pretty unique. I'll give you mad points for that. I just think, like Aaron says, what's happening here is it's the orangish rust color that you've chosen for that kind of the blast damage to the paint has scored it off, seeing what I'm interpreting as now steel because it's rusted, which is totally cool. I have no problem with that. It's just what it is that's dominating kind of what you've done with the piece. I'd say realistically, it's going to be the same comment to a lot of them. I think you're pretty close to doing something kind of special with this one. Is just bring it in a little bit, and you have a lot of opportunities. Your scoring marks have a lot of interesting colors in them, but nothing's happening anywhere else in terms of some of your other paint and weathering colors. So this, to me, if I'm being really honest with you, looks like it's about 50% to where it probably should have ended up. And that might be a time management issue. I don't really know, but I think you're onto something here, and I think you've got a pretty strong skill set behind you for what you're trying to do on a technical level with the splattering and the randomness and how that works. It's the best of the battle damage we've seen so far in terms of kind of, I like where it's at, I like what it's going, but it's the stark contrast is probably fighting us a little bit on this one, but it's not a big criticism. We're talking a small change here, and this is going to really pay dividends. So yeah, whatever you're doing, Martin, you're doing some really good stuff, and keep pushing yourself. It's really cool.
Good photography too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely nice. Yeah, I think like what you were saying too, Aaron, about the physical damage to the kit, and then painting damage to match too, and also, I mean, just thinking about like how that physical damage is made. So like what kind of weapon or something is making these particular kind of scratch marks is some quite small scratches, and like all kind in a very, you have to think about the direction of like, okay, if it's being attacked or hit by something, the direction and like the shape and size of the scratches, some of them are more believable than others, I think. Or like you have this one over here where like it goes through this part, but then that red part is not broken. So I think it would have been a good opportunity to also break that red part in there as well too, to make that big slash damage more believable there. But yeah, agree with all the rest of what you guys said.
And one thing I will say is good on you for having the confidence to destroy a kit, right? Like a lot of people.
I really like it. Yeah, I'm with you on this. There's a lot of cool shit happening here. This one's really good, and definitely agree that you're brave, you're confident. There's a lot here happening that I think you could really build upon. It might have just been a time issue, realistically speaking, because you've got the skills. Definitely, this is cool.
All right, here's our Camphor by Masimune.
Go, Mark.
Yeah.
You got it here. Okay, so, yeah, this one, if the last one is kind of a really good on a technical level, this one, I think some of the techniques are letting this modeler down a little bit in terms of the application of the actual weathering here is a little bit, I don't want to say clumsy because that's a negative word. I'm not trying to be that way, but it's a little bit heavy-handed, if I will. I would probably like to see a little bit more precision with the marks and the wear and tear and the depth of what this guy's trying to do. Because I like the repurposed colors. They're pleasing, the desert scheme and the kind of added shields. And this can have kind of a Mad Maxy kind of a vibe to it really easily. similar to Andrew's, the Zaku warrior we saw earlier in that same kind of really beat up desert scheme kind of combatant, maybe been around for decades almost, kind of a machine. I'd say realistic, and there is a bit of a stark contrast between the weapons are so clean and the machine's not. So I kind of understand that story in the basic sense, but it's everywhere where all the weapons are kind of the same cleanliness, and then the machine isn't anywhere remotely like that. So maybe you can play with your stories of the machine guns and some of the weapons used more often are dirtier than some of the stuff that isn't used as much. Kind of it's a really stark break between some of the pieces and some of the other stuff. So for me, it's just refinement on this one. You kind of got a unique kind of illustration style happening, and just keep playing with that and keep pushing yourself on that. That's kind of what I would say here.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add is I do like all the little added extras of the build itself, and I like all the kind of like, like that wording that's, looks to be hand painted on that part of the armor there and things like that. Like that's pretty cool. But yeah, just a bit overdone, a little bit, just a bit heavy-handed, I think, in parts. But from a stylistic point of view, it sort of has impact. So you're not too far from getting something. But again, just a bit of refinement. And and this one I think is definitely a candidate for being no sense of gradient in terms of the weathering. It's just like pow. The entire thing is just sort of a rusted heap.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult because the diorama, I don't know, or like the base anyway, sort of makes it look that like the color of the dirt that it's in is like the same color as the mobile suit. So like looking at the mobile suit, I don't know if this is dirt, sand, like mud on the suit, or if that's just the color of the paint, because it seemed like so close to each other. So it's kind of hard to tell where the paint starts and the dirt stops, or vice versa on that. So
down on the feet a little bit.
So
this model, I would say for this guy in particular, the piece to me that resonates is the blue Gujian that we really like, the hand painted one. I would say this modeler really studies that piece a lot and kind of looks at the cohesive intensity, and then goes back into this piece and starts to really refine some of the application processes here. It does feel a little maybe rushed at some places too, like it's some of the rusting's a little just kind of jammed on there. It's got that feeling to me, and I would like to see a little bit more kind of precision and just kind of a focus of your style a little bit to come up with something. There's some sirens for you. I'll save it.
Just the last thing I want to say too is just that I agree with what the guys were saying about some of the added bits, like the cloth added for the upper arms is cool, and like the armor panels that looked like they're just kind of slapped on there in the battlefield just for some extra armor. That's all pretty convincing, but just a few too many weapons for my taste. And like what Aaron was saying about the difference in the weathering on the weapons, that's one thing. But I just think trying to force too many weapons onto a mobile suit just kind of always looks a bit awkward. It's kind of really hard to sell the look of that. So I think it really could have, if you would have just stuck with maybe just the Gatling shield without the Sturmfasts and without the chain mine and without the missile pods on the side of the leg, and you had like just the bazookas on the back, the shotgun on the arm, and then the Gatling shield, I think that would have been more than enough weapons for this.
I've always felt the Camphor was always overloaded anyway. I know a lot of people like the look. It's always it's always too many weapons on this mobile suit for me personally. I always remove some of them on the Camphor.
So I mean, just because you have a lot of weapons that you want to use, you have to make some cuts. Sometimes it's hard to do, but look at it this way: the weapons that you don't end up using on a kit is just something that you can use for customizing a different kit later on. Even if you got a cool weapon, you'll always find a use for it eventually. So let's look at Matthew's Zaku now. So another Xeon suit here. All right, there you go.
It's a Goof.
Goof, right? Yes, sorry. I was looking at the back there, right? Yes. Goof.
Yeah, I know my shit, man.
I know. Go for it, Mike.
Okay. I believe this is probably we're looking at probably a beginner type level guy who's just starting to experiment with what weathering is all about, and trying to dirty up and rough up a mobile suit. I like kind of the distressed coloring on top of the base camo. And I think there is a lot of restraint being used there. It appears to be some sort of like dry brushing and rubbing type process, which can be quite effective because what I like is that the high spots are actually worn metal, which is how it would be. So I do think what you're doing is in the proper context. I think it's just a matter of taking your skills and just keep pushing yourself on the next few builds to really build up your skill sets. There's some basics here at play a little bit, the under piece of the shoulder's not, finished in, and the hands are, I think just it's a tightening of the basics. You're probably in the early days of learning this stuff. So this is a great opportunity to get the experience of what this is all about and the feedback. The pose is good. So props to that. And just keep going, man. I think, and I like the color scheme too. It actually works pretty well on this one.
Yeah, and on the basics too, a lot of seam lines are visible, which always throw us off, right? Like there's one on the shoulder, one on the gun. Yeah. And seam lines, I mean, look, at the end of the day, seam lines are never good. You want to get rid of them regardless, but in particular when you're weathering and stuff, they just are an instant giveaway because any washes or anything you use will pull against them and kind of give you these weird bits of weathering and areas of kind of dust accumulation and things like that doesn't kind of look correct. So yeah, super important to take some extra time and get rid of that stuff. That's a general modeling rule. Yeah, it's not just for weathering.
Sure. Yeah, you can see that here, like on the pipes, hoses here as well too. Again, just some sanding on that.
Yeah, I know it's a bitch to do, but it's worth doing.
We all hate it.
Yeah. I agree with that too. Well, I just want to say that I also like what you were saying, Mike, about how like the metal kind of shows through. I think you're talking about like on like the dark parts here.
Yeah.
So yeah, the kind of dry brush rubbing sort of technique that he's using, while it doesn't look as nice on the lighter color parts, on the dark parts, it does give you that kind of nice worn metal kind of look on there, which does look pretty nice.
I like the basic understandings in play here. So that's a really key part of this, in that right now you're probably experience level, skill sets, just growth. And it, right now it's just add it all in for the next 20 to 50 models. And trust me, in a year or two, you're gonna be well on your way. Yeah.
All right. Next is Max Ortiz with an RX Gundam. Here we are.
Gundam.
Yes, this would be I want to say 1 year War Master Grade, I believe, or one of the Master
I got
Grades.
mine on my shelf up there. It's one of my favorites actually.
Or is it the 2.0? I'm not sure.
I think it's 2.0.
Yeah, I think maybe it is. Yeah, it's got the
Not
inner
free,
part. Yeah.
The vent, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, it's I mean, I love the colors on this, but it's a pretty interesting weathering style on this. So Aaron, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, great colors. Very cool. I haven't seen one like that. And probably that one's a better example. Cool photography. I really appreciate the photography on this one. You've really you've thought about light, the best way to showcase thing. You've used sort of shadow to your advantage. So it's good, good photography. Makes it very clean and easy to kind of get a good look at it. Some of the weathering is a little bit, just by the numbers, do this and then do that, and then step 3, do this, and you'll end up with chipping and whatnot. And that's fine. That's where we all start. But if you kind of get more deeper into weathering as like a science, and thinking about how it actually happens in the real world and stuff, you can start to refine those things so that instead of them just looking like blotches all over it, they actually do look like they've been formed naturally, and they kind of sell that narrative a bit. I think you just need maybe to practice technique a little bit, because your paintwork looks pretty damn clean. You know, your build quality looks excellent. So I'm maybe going to say you're a clean builder that's just getting into weathering, and it sort of looks like maybe a first or second attempt at it. But yeah, you could benefit a lot from, like Mike was saying, when actually said quite a lot last stream, is about this is like any discipline, right? Practice, practice, practice. And anyone who's really good at it understands that, if I want to get good, I'm going to have to practice some of the core techniques. Not everything has to be a build, and there's quick ways to kind of learn and practice that stuff. So yeah, I would say with this is you do need to practice your kind of techniques a bit, so that when you apply them to a really great build like this, they'll sell it and it'll come off.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. I didn't think about that, but he's probably a much more experienced clean builder, because the paintwork and everything, the colors are so nice on this. I think that's one thing that we all really like about this.
Decals are spot on, so definitely got all those fundamental skills.
Yeah,
and even the paintwork itself isn't, like there's some sort of tonal variation there. You've maybe sort of faded some of the panels a little bit, but the weathering itself, you look fairly new at the weathering. So practice that, and you'd have pretty solid base to put something impressive out there, I'd say.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this a couple of times in the last stream, like where it was one that I feel like if you would have left it clean and not done any weathering on it at all and entered in the clean side, it would have done quite well.
That's actually my first comment on this one, is that right there. I would have recommended you not to even weather at this stage, to be truthful. Now that's probably really critical, and it sounds negative. It's not, Max. I know I don't think you're in stream this one. I know you're in stream before. So I would say everything that Aaron said is take that to heart. It's meant obviously just to help.
Yes.
For me, from a technical standpoint, and I'll stick to just the pure technique on this one for you, because there's not a lot for really us to discuss from a weathering standpoint per se. It's just you've hand painted chips, an extremely random kind of almost like a pattern of sorts. It's really difficult to kind of get a feel for what or how this happened to this machine, especially a top tier RX 782 real type colors. Like, what was he doing that got him to this, to where this happened to it? So think about those things at heart. Take that to truth. Every machine has a process that it gets from its life in point A to where you're trying to showcase it. So think about that journey and what's causing that. From a technique standpoint, if you're going to employ the process where you have the lighter paint color edge around the darker exposed metal, I'd actually recommend going to a sponge. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to actually dab that lighter color on the edges and stuff in a much more controlled manner with a sponge. And the sponge will give you the little bit of the random technical kind of grittiness that happens just from the pure process of it going. And then go back in with the hand painted brush and then do a few of them, not all of them, down to the metal. And that's where you're going to start getting a really quick, easy way to get chipping that's layered through paint and then layered down through primer, layered down to the metal. So just from a pure technique aspect, switch over that and you'll see big improvements. And it also will shrink these chips down. These are massive marks for this type of machine. Some of these are 5 or 6 feet across, realistically, probably. So, think about the variations in sizes and stuff that happen on real life machines, even from the tiniest scratch on a big machine to its largest impact. So, but the painting, the photography, the color choices, everything about the basics of this thing. Like when we talk about get your basics done, you've got brilliant basic skills. So that's a win right there. And just take this to heart. And I would say just practice on something small. Get the easy grade or the whatever first grade, whatever Jimmy rig came out for $7. You get like 10 of them. Thank you, entry grade, easy grade. That's my name. I'm easy grade. Yeah, that's what I would say is get like 5 of those and then just like paint and weather those up, kind of like how Zach painted like all the different schemes for his HGs. Just do that and then weather them all. Don't worry about a master grade and then get practice that way. That would help a lot.
Yes, indeed. Yeah,
I used to practice on pegs, if I want to be honest here.
Pegs?
Plastic pegs.
Ah.
Like spoons, the pegs?
Yeah, you know, like clothes pegs, like that you peg.
Oh, yeah, the little clothesline pins. Yeah.
Yeah.
What you're talking about. With the little round head and the little body. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Lots of angles and edges and stuff. They're really easy to practice on.
Australians are pretty handy guys. You know what they're doing down there.
There you go. So, someone, just on a quick side note, someone the other day asked me to try your accent, Aaron, but I didn't want to because I felt like my fake Australian accent is probably a different dialect. Do you guys have like different dialects there? I would assume so. But I've never really heard too much about it.
Yeah, of course. Like anywhere.
Yeah.
Like there's definite. Like if you go the further up north you go, like the words are elongate, and there's a real different kind of Queenslander sort of. It slows down. The language slows down.
Mm-hmm.
Melbourne is at the other end of the scale. It's a little bit more posh sort of sounding, you know. All the Aussies on the stream now are going to go, what the hell is this guy talking about?
Righto.
All right. So anyway, long and short of it is I didn't try because I'm sure it was going to be just totally wrong. But anyway, here's Mr. Panda Pancake here with probably the most diorama, even though... it was not a diorama contest, but among all the contest entries, this is probably the most diorama one.
And probably the best name.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out what a panda pancake is. Like, what does that look like? Is that like a black and white cookie, but like in a stack of pancakes? You guys know what the black and white cookie is, where it's half black, half white.
Yeah.
Oreos?
Yeah. Oreo. Oh, there's that too. Stack of Oreo pancakes. Dude, that sounds so good right now. My sweet tooth's out of control lately too. I don't know what's going on. I guess I'm up.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
So I'd say I'd like this one just for what it is. Straight up out of the gate, just not being clean or not being weathered. Just it's a really kind of cool, unique piece. Strong, dynamic outdoor photography. Clever. I would say this modeler he really enjoys being a scale modeler, and I like that part about it. I can see the kind of passion come through on this one, and that resonates because it's evident with the color scheme. And the photo I like the best in terms of what this contest is about is there's that close-up of the leg. I think is that one there, the second one there. That one there probably showcases his weathering skills and painting skills, probably the strongest overall, because it's hard to pull back from the diorama and grade it on what we're talking about. But I like this one a lot for the really good strength is there's some, like on that thigh piece, there's a little bit of the dust, and it kind of cleans up as it goes up the piece, up the ledge of the ridge line there on that outer thigh piece. That's nicely done. And then you go to the front skirt armor where you've got the dust in the little detail there, and you've got it in the right area. Like, I like the fact that you truly understand gravity, dirt, what's happening with this. The scuff marks are controlled. They're complementary to the strong paint scheme of these kind of raspberry, metallic blue and pink kind of color scheme, which is really cool. But you pulled it off without it looking like a candy store Gundam. So there's a lot of skills here and intelligence to understand kind of how to tone down something that's really vibrant, which is really cool to see. You're going to put this on this diorama and do some other stuff, and we can't really get into it from the contest level stuff, but it's strong enough that supports it. You could definitely do a little bit more with the rock work if you really want to do, but it's kind of stylized. Everything about this is really kind of cool and unique. It's hard to grade this a little bit simply because it's kind of its own thing, more artistic almost, what I'm trying to say. But there's a lot of really nice weathering here. Those of you looking to know what dust on a machine looks like as it goes up the legs in a bipedal form of stuff, this is a really good example, I think, for the guys in the show to really look at. And there's some stuff here happening. So I liked it a lot.
Yeah, Danny, I actually really like the diorama. It's cool. It sells the scale awesomely. So if you want to talk about scale and how to sell the scale of it, like you've really sold the scale of it with that diorama. So I would say that it definitely adds something to the build. Painting an entire machine in metallics, I know metallics are cool and they look great and everything, but it is also then it's even more challenging to get weathering on that right. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It's your model, paint it whatever color you like. But yeah, in terms of to sell that weathering, your weathering is actually, like Mike said, it's actually pretty damn good. You show restraint, you've got a good gradient going there, you understand the principles of weathering, but I think that fully candy paint work, it just makes it hard to kind of sell that. And if you had maybe had a bit more of a, you know, a fitting kind of or standard sort of colors and whatnot, that weathering that you've got on that would have popped and really kind of been a lot more believable. That being said, though, it is pretty cool, and I really think it sits in awesomely with that diorama and really helps sell the scale.
Yeah, I agree. I think that he did make it a bit more of a challenge on himself, trying to weather fully metallic paint scheme like that. Yeah, so he's going to have a hard time with that either way. But I mean, like you guys said, the weathering does look pretty nice on it. The scale within the diorama, again, not a diorama contest. So, you know, we're just talking not from the judging standpoint, but just from just ourselves personally. We like the diorama. It's cool. I like it as well too. Just the composition of it is quite nice. Eh? With
oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, like, it's not so much the diorama. Like, I just think the way you've used the diorama to sell the scale is spot on, right?
Yeah. But
yeah, I like that photo there where him coming around the corner. Really cool picture. That just. Everything about that's really on point. You really, for what I think his goal was. I like it.
It looks real, right? I mean, it looks. You have to take a second look at it. You know.
Yeah, totally.
Lots of challenges, very well handled. I guess you could say almost.
Yeah.
Taking on that. That's his goal. I really like that.
All right. Next, we've got the Master Grade Dynamis. Here.
That's a new one.
From Mustafa.
Me? Yeah. Yeah, pretty cool. I like the color scheme. It's unique. Not seen that sort of color scheme used before, so that's cool. And I think a good solid choice of colors for a weathering comp. I would say, like, the chipping over it. Like, when I looked at this, I sort of initially thought, oh, it's a bit heavy-handed. And then I thought, well, actually no, the chipping's probably very close to scale, if I'm honest. Maybe a little bit overdone, but not so bad. The chipping's pretty good. But it just hasn't been followed up with kind of those other layers of weathering that really sell that chipping. Like, it just looks like a single color chip on top of the paint, right? And, where you've managed to master getting it so refined and so small, you can really sell it home, because that becomes almost like your roadmap of where to kind of bring in your other layers of weathering to sort of really send it home and sell it. And I think if you had have done that, this weathering in particular would have popped. Great base. I really like the base, how it's integrated in there. I think it's a cross section of a log. I mean,
yeah, it looks like that. Yeah.
Which is very cool. Great rock work and groundwork in general. So you really, you strike me as a very proficient ground model, like terrain modeler. So maybe that's where you've kind of come from in terms of that terrain or terrain stuff from gaming. But yeah, cool. Like the chipping I like on it. Just there's other layers that kind of need to go on that to really sell it, to send it, to bring it home.
Yeah, that's probably the fairest assumption here, is that I think there's a lot of skills. Mustafa, you're coming on strong. Okay, so this is a good counterpoint. So to Max's real type a few pieces ago, this is what I'm talking about. We're using the sponge to create the actual chips, just from a pure technique point of view. In this case, using the heavy black, I would probably say a lot of people make a classic mistake with this, is they use one color for the whole model. don't be afraid to use 3, 4, 5 colors across your chips. If you want to use this kind of an idea, start expanding things, guys. I'm seeing a lot of single application stuff here, and this goes to kind of what Aaron's talking about, in that you treat this as that's it, and that's kind of like you're just getting started is the honest answer here. So there's a lot that you could do to further this on. How Max was kind of lightening up some of the edges to catch a highlight. That technique is designed so that if there's a physical chip in the actual surface and then the lower edge of that paint that's still on top is exposed, the light's going to catch that edge. That's actually what they're trying to show. So you can play with that in terms of techniques to add layers to this one, and also just expand your color spectrum, guys. Don't be afraid to use 3, 4, 5, 6 colors across the spectrum of your chips to get a variety of intensity level. Some of these don't all need to go down to the black metal surface underneath what you're trying to show, so to speak. So there's some good techniques here. It's just start expanding your world a little bit in terms of your color applications and what you could really use. And same with the base colors here. You've got like 3 colors of paint. Quadruple that. You know what I'm saying? Like that green could be made up of 4 or 5 different shades within itself. Same with the tans and the browns. You could really start expanding your efforts here. And to me, that's what I think needs to happen with some of these pieces, where they're almost too simple in terms of they're one layer, and they're calling it done. And that's kind of, it sounds really harsh, but it's not. It's just really start to embrace your skill sets and keep pushing yourself down that road, because you'll start to see the machine come to life a little bit more. But it's a pretty cool piece overall. I think it's HG actually.
Yeah. Zach, can you go back to that one where the big boulder was at the front? That one.
Yeah.
See, have a look at that boulder, right? Look at all of the mix of colors and tones there that are on that boulder, okay? So you absolutely understand how that boulder is not just brown. Well, it's the same principle for the model, right? Like where you're trying to get that weathered and worn look, you know, there's those other layers. So when you painted that, you would have like probably based it brown, and then you've brought in washes and you've brought in other colors over the top, and you maybe dry brush to bring out the highlights. But it really looks realistic now. It's the same type of principles. You understand it. It just needs to be applied kind of to the model itself as those other layers of weathering, and you know, it would be 100 times better. It would just really, really come to life.
Yeah, I'd almost sorry, Zach, I didn't mean to cut you. I would almost say really quick, do what you've done, Mustafa, like 5 times over, and go extreme, and then kind of come back a little bit on it and pull yourself back in. Like go to the other spectrum and just go nuts, and then pull it way back in. I think you'll find a nice sweet spot in that kind of a thing, or almost want to push you guys a little bit further. Just I want to push you off the cliff a little bit, and then save you, and kind of something like that is what I'm trying to go with, if that makes sense.
I was just gonna say that just weathering aside, just as far as the build in general, I think it's cool. It was a cool concept to have it like with some armor panels missing, like it's got a bunch of pieces missing around the knee, all around the foot down here, side skirt, and the entire other arm is all gone. There's not really too much like other like physical damage where it looks like those were broken off. It looks like they're just kind of left off. So I don't know if maybe like some more damage around the areas where those parts are missing maybe would have also kind of helped sell that like those parts of armor were really so damaged that they had to just be ejected, or they were completely fallen off or something. So a little bit more damage maybe around the areas where the armor is gone, where those pieces are gone, would help sell that. And then just also the pose I think could be tweaked a little bit. Just thinking realistically, it looks like I'm guessing it's supposed to look like it's running and shooting at the same time, which I think it would be leaning a little bit more far forward. It looks like it's sort of like gonna fall backwards now if he were to actually shoot the gun while trying to run like in this pose. So I think you could tweak the pose a little bit just to make it look a little bit more convincing. But I think it was a cool concept. Again, like we talked about earlier, to damage your kit or to leave parts off your kit. It takes a little bit of bravery to do that. But.
He's in chat, guys. So okay. I will take a second or two to add a little bit more because you're with us, which is cool. So to my idea about colors, So where you've got the black chips all over the place, what I would like to see, or what you could really try for the next time, is where you've got your olive green camo scheme. Choose a complementary color that's like maybe a slightly lighter shade of green, and sponge chip that all over, and then come back in and start tapping out some of those with the brush and darkening some metal pieces, and then switch to some tans and pale earth tones for the other parts of the camo. So mix up your chipping color for your color breakup. So where you got green, use green, and then come back on top and start pushing some of those down to the metal with the brush. Because what the chips will do is will give you the pattern. Your patterns are really nicely done. They're a little bit even all over the place. Like all your corners have the same depth of intensity of sponge. Like I can see what you're doing. I can physically kind of see what you're going through in your head. Cut that back a little bit where some of those are a little bit more thought out. Like if he's gonna elbow or put his weight into somewhere where that's gonna get more damage, and that's fine. But somewhere where, like in the hip frontal thrust area, like where it's all on the waist pieces, it's probably not going to be as heavily chipped as the shoulder pieces. So pull back and restrain yourself according to the story of what's going on with this machine, and then play with the colors per the color breakup, and then go back in and tap in your metals and your graphites and your highlight colors on top of that, and you'll get a little bit more depth to kind of what you're trying to do here. And that's kind of the next step, if you will. And it's really easy. You just need more colors out to do that. So technique is good.
Yeah. All right. I got the next one here for us. It is Nathaniel. And I think Aaron, you're up. Yeah. On this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, look, I mean, I think this one probably we've given the feedback on multiple others about it. Yeah, look, like obviously there's some technique issues with the rusting and the weathering and stuff, but again, don't want to discourage anyone, but if they want the feedback that's going to help them grow, then yeah, you do need to practice some of your techniques there and to refine them. And again, the photography, a whole bunch of different poses. I think we've talked a lot about that. It makes it a bit of a challenge to judge. I do like the work on the blade there. Like, just go back to that previous one.
Yep.
That's pretty solid. That's pretty believable in terms of your kind of discoloration on the metal, and then the kind of chipping along that leading edge of the blade. That's pretty cool. So definitely you've got some skill there, you can see, but yeah, just a lot of refinement needed to kind of really make it, believable and to bring it home.
Yeah. I would agree. Yeah, I would agree totally with that. And just it's going to be the same conversation a little bit where your early days, but you've got a really good basic understanding. So I think you're a little bit past the beginner stage, but you're kind of diving into the realm of what this could really, potentially be for you. I'm not entirely convinced on the kind of rusty color of the streaking color. Again, to the previous comment on the other piece, you're using one color here for this, and again, expand your color selection. Where you've got all those kind of rusty red colors bleeding out, you can choose from 4 or 5 different tones related to it and start mixing it up a little bit. Just to provide a little bit more breakup and realism towards grease. Grease comes in different colors and viscosities and all that dirt stuff. It's going to look slightly different shades. So don't be afraid to use more than one color for the weathering. Same for the paint. Kind of just keep pushing.
Yeah, I think a pretty interesting combination of the parts as well too. I think the not Barbatos, but those feet fit pretty well with the design. He's got the Kotobukiya hands, of course, work well with that design. I'm guessing that this cape is just epoxy putty or something. Maybe just handmade, it looks like. I don't think that's...
It's pretty good if it's handmade.
Yeah, because you can see like a couple little rough spots. That's what makes me think that's handmade. But I'm also wondering if it's if it's a piece of the RG Crossbones cape, and then maybe he all extended it a little bit, added a little bit onto the front end or something like that. So I think it's maybe a modified piece from the RG Crossbone or something. I think.
Who's the builder, Zach?
She's in the chat.
Nathaniel.
I think it's from Exia. You said it's an ignition kit.
Here we go. Extra ignition. Okay.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there he is. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does that make sense though, Nathaniel? Like, so like on that one leg shot, it's the close up of the kind of ankle leg shot there with the green component in the middle there, which I think is nicely handled. The streaking down the white side there, that's kind of what I'm talking about. Is don't be afraid to expand your color selections through that range of stuff. Because it's the same all over the whole thing, and whether that's meant to be dust or grease or grime or whatever your intention is with that, it's going to be refining that part of your process. Because what I see underneath the basic painting, the scuffs and scratches underneath that are nicely handled. Your edges are you've got a nice little just subtle scuff of metal on those. It's real. That's all really good. For me, it's improving the kind of where that I see. And I'm not, the fact that I don't know what that is. That's what the problem is kind of, I have to like figure out what you're trying to do a little bit. And so work on those areas a little bit, because I think you've got a lot of good basic skills to as a foundation, and then push on from there. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes.
He said he totally gets the feedback. So yes.
Sweet.
All right. I think this was maybe one of our, it's the only one, or I think there was maybe only one Nachtin kit in the contest. So
Nicholas Chu.
Yeah.
I love the Nachtins. I'm excited for the big one coming from Kotobukiya.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be so fun.
What's the big one coming? How big is it?
It's
is it 35th?
I know it's something like 10 or 12 centimeters, so it's much larger.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to be more like that, like the size of an HG, sort of in height. Anyway,
cool.
Aaron, you want to say anything about this one here?
Yeah, they're awesome little kits. You can't help but love them. So you know, when you see it, you kind of go, "No," you know. So it's always good to see one. Yeah, I mean, look, for its size, it's probably, you know, that we can't really sort of say that the weathering's out of scale. It's probably not. I mean, you know, I think that something like this, even though this is a small kit, because of its scale, you really can go to town on something like this, right? If you do it the right way. But you know, there are some obvious things there that I can kind of see, like where you've got chipping quite heavily on some parts, but like on the actual feet and the underside of the knees and stuff, there's nothing. It's undamaged, and that would be a likely place of some damage. Some of the streaking's a little bit off. It's just sort of all over, but I do like, I mean, I can't tell whether or not that tonal variation in the yellow is deliberate, is painted in there. I think it may be. I think there might be some highlights kind of painted in on that yellow, which is nice. But if that's just your kind of photography and the washes and stuff, that's great. You know, I really like how that yellow sort of sings. But yeah, again, this, you know, bit of technique practice, and you'll kind of be able to refine that down. And just generally too, like with chips, these are quite rounded, subdued chips, right? And if you look at the way that paint tends to chip, it always tends to chip quite jagged, quite angular, just to the nature of what's actually happening. The rounded kind of more sort of roundy type thing is more where things have worn, you know, like they've worn down to the middle. So if you're trying to do chips, you know, try to stick with kind of more of an edgy, sharper look. And if you want to do that worn paint, then it's not, then it's kind of, you're not using the same technique as chipping to do that. But yeah, cool little guy. Always love them.
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I'd say this is going to be the classic. Do half the number of chips that you probably would have thought in your head to look good, and it'll look a lot better. So this is one of those. Probably, I'd say even do like a third of what you put down onto this guy. Given the size of it, that we're all very, you know, there's a little tiny dude. You know, you're only going to need a little bit, and a little bit goes a long way with this. But the photography, what we can see is kind of fun outdoors. It does showcase your custom stuff. you're fighting some basics here. There's some orange peel and some other things in the paint, and that's equal good and bad for clean versus weathered. Doesn't matter. So, you know, but again, this is so small and you're zoomed in so much, you're probably seeing texture with the camera. Maybe your eye's not even seeing almost, because I know I'm old and I can't see shit without the camera shows up, and then it's a mess. But yeah, this is going to be kind of like the real type Gundam, where the chips are kind of it's a little bit like Aaron said, it's not making a ton of sense to us, but that's okay. I think this was a fun one for you. I think you just enjoyed it and you're just having a good time, and you know, we all like people having a good time. So yeah, just take all this to heart and push on to the next one.
Yeah, I agree that it's a really cool effect going on with the yellow. It does look like I think it's a gradient, an intentional gradient he did with the kind of yellow orange. But I do know that like that the Gaia yellow orange paint that I used recently does have that effect a little bit, where it looks kind of like that. Sometimes you can't tell if it's really more yellow or orange. So it could be that color paint, but you know, I do really like that. I will say I wish that the cannon was like a centimeter lower, because it's so high up above the robot, way up here. So I feel like you got rid of this sort of section.
You thought he was tippy before. Camera. That thing's gonna blow over in the wind.
Yeah, it's gonna do like a backwards flip when that thing fires off. But yeah, if you just got rid of like this little section somewhere, I think that would have helped to like sell the look of it. But I mean, yeah, like you said, I always love seeing those. So I was glad that someone entered one of those into the contest. It's cool.
I'm glad that company exists. I'm glad whoever came up with the whole thing and put it out on the market is just like, those are the kind of people we need a lot more of. It's just so cool, you know?
Totally.
And I love there's the little black, there's other versions that we literally can't, I mean, I don't think Adam's brought them in yet, but I mean, there's a bunch of other versions that we haven't seen yet that
we weren't able to. Yeah, this one.
Oh, it's brutal. And they're like $50, and you're like, come on, it's like this big. Bullshit.
This guy, the railgun version is the other version, yeah.
Yeah, that's not fair. That's not nice, Zach.
So I shouldn't show you my other 3 up on the shelf?
No, please don't. I'm just going to get mad.
All right. Nori. Okay, I'm going to really struggle with this name. Nori.
I'm just calling, we're just going to call you Nori for now. That's all we can do.
This was one of the ones that at first, you know, you really don't see the weathering a whole lot looking at this at first. I mean, you kind of the first thing you see is all the kind of stuff added around on the kit and everything. So, Mike, you want to start us off for this one here?
Zoom in with Mr. Zaku Warrior. I've got this bad boy on my shelf in the other room, actually. I got the Blaze coming in too from Panda. They've reprinted this, so I'm excited. I like there's a lot of customers. There's a lot of stuff going on in this one. This is a man who bit off a lot for a 2-month contest. I will tell you that right now, and I will criticize you out of the gate, only because I love the kit and I love the colors. I like what you're doing. Is that you really chomped off a lot for a 2-month contest. So to be fair, you probably backed yourself into a corner for the weathering side of this. To be truthful, you might have just been better off pushing this into the clean build and skipping all the scuffs and scrapes, and really refine what you've got, because there's a lot happening here. So to kind of get into, if I take this in terms of, I interpret this one as a space machine and not really something that was on the ground and getting a lot of dust and dirt and mud and stuff of that nature. So, and then a well-used one at that. And you're doing some interesting stuff with the light metal showing through. It's probably quite realistic in certain spaces around the knees, pretty nicely done. It does make sense compared to the Nachtin kit that we just talked about. Where you've got the scratches and scuffs and scrapes is working for you. I'm just not sure if I'm really honest here, and this is going to sound brutal, and it's not. I'm not trying to be a dick or anything. It's just, you've got this really stark red, you got a really rich, deep, dark black with these really rich, deep, dark maroons with a really bright white, and then you're throwing a silver chip on top of everything. It's a kind of a visual, like your brain's like, whoa, what's going on? I think you've got a lot of stuff here that you can work with, though, and that means is pull in the chipping and the scratches and the scrapes, probably play a little bit more with some grease, some leaky joints and stuff to get a little bit more of a story going a little bit here. Subjectively, colors are always a little bit more of a personal opinion. This is a loud, strong piece, my friend. And for a weathering contest, personally, I'm not sure it probably was the smartest play, if that makes sense to people. This is kind of a time management, making some decisions that probably put you in a corner because weathering red's hard. I'm going to tell you that right now. Weathering primary colors is usually pretty difficult to pull off and look realistic. You know, you almost have to look at like a Caterpillar tractor in the real world to see how a bright primary color weathers up. Because you could do some fading here, you could do some paint effects that probably would have really made the piece sing a little bit more. This one was a hard one for me to judge, actually, to be honest with you. Not really sure where I was going to go with this one. I'll let Aaron take it over.
Yeah, like for me, this is like my favorite kit. I just think that, like, as in my personal favorite of, you know, in terms of kits that I really like. But I sort of got the impression that a lot of the build has kind of the clean type building where they've added on a lot of metal parts. You know, there's a lot of color separation, intricate decals, you know, a lot of sort of aftermarket parts and hoses and things added on. And then the weathering's just been slapped over the top, you know? And I think, like, it's too busy. It's too busy a kit for a weathering challenge. Like, this is like one of those really intricate, tricked up versions of the Zaku Warrior that you would see, as opposed to one that's been built for a weathering comp. So yeah, you know, there's some technique things that we could look at, but I think that's fairly evident. My main feedback would be that it's probably not the best pick in terms of how you've built this kit. Like, the kit's fine, but like with all of that extra detail and that sort of stuff, it's not probably the best pick for weathering comp.
What are those legs? That's what I'm trying to figure out. These leg parts down here, those are not from that kit.
Different feet, it looks like. Those cylinders on the ankles. Yeah, he's definitely repurposed a few things here. It actually says for the clean build on his original post photo, so I think it was kind of intended for that, and then he started scuffing it up. And then maybe at the last second wanted to do weathering. And that's, you know, guys, truthfully to be told, it's a simple conversation to me about just having a strong goal, being a little bit more disciplined, probably. I think you're really excited about this, and it shows, which is cool. But now you've just got to, you've got to really refine yourself to really push up to the upper levels of being able to compete against the upper people in this particular contest. So you're on your way for sure. Don't take this as a negative. It's a tough one for us to judge a little bit, because it's not really weathered per se in terms of traditional weathering. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. I'm just checking it out. There's like stuff under there.
All right. We've got another Zaku Warrior up immediately next.
Bless you.
Still plenty to go through, so we probably need to pick up the pace a little bit on these as we're getting into a second hour here.
Okay.
We'll try to get through these a little bit.
So, yeah, watch the photography. A lot of flash blowout there, which makes it hard to kind of get a good look. Not a huge amount of weathering that's visible and like obviously visible. So I would say, you know, like that's probably down to your photography is not really showing it off that well. But yeah, like I think you can go a little bit more with what you're doing there in terms of for a weathering comp.
Yeah, I'm going to go probably a younger model builder for sure. Probably just kind of starting to get really comfortable with painting and weathering the kit and customization and those kinds of things. So it's the same comments we've had from the start, is just the basics. However, you've got some really smart application of the chips and what you're doing, like where you're kind of focusing your efforts on the wear and tear of the machine. It's very smartly done, and it's very restrained, which is fine. It's less is totally fine. Nobody really is going to really sweat you for that too much. And then it's just the same conversation as you guys start to learn these things, really start to look at the real world and see what's going on. And you'll start to apply that back to some of these pieces here. And I think you'll start to see some improvements, but yeah, definitely keep going.
Yeah. And I'll just say the same thing. Like I said before, I think it's one too many guns. If you got one big gun, you don't really need a second big gun. For me, it's always seems a bit overkill. I see like that, which I mean, overkill is what you were going for, I suppose. But I mean, I do appreciate that he tried to make his own kind of custom effect part as well too. I think for some photography, if you're playing with kind of the perspective of it, that can be cool for your photography. But yeah.
I need to refill. Sorry.
Raymond here is up next. Yes, with the Helldiver.
Yeah. This one's pretty cool, actually. This one is a little bit of a sleeper. I think it could have actually placed a little bit higher up in this contest. I like a lot of this piece here. And this is kind of like where I see from just like the previous Zaku Warrior, like I see like where that modeler was at that stage to kind of, this is kind of like a few years down the road. This is kind of where you'll be, kind of a conversation. Like I see kind of a progression and you're kind of coming up through where you're applying things in a restrained format. You're using some highlights and shadowings and fading in the paint job itself to create further weathering, which is excellent to see. We don't see enough of that in these shows. It's almost, you've almost got some miniature style painting involved with this, which I really like and appreciate. And then down low, again, it's subtle, which is great. So to those of you that worry about those sort of things of intense or subtle, the dusting down low on the calves and lower part of the feet are great. So this was a piece, I think, just from a pure skill set, just keep refining yourself. I think you're knocking on the door of taking it up to a serious level here of really hitting home. It's very even left to right. And I said this a little bit earlier in a couple of pieces. Your leg weathering for both of these pieces, it's very even on both of them. And you can really push areas of asymmetry through that too, to do some further, because I think you've got the skills. I think your base skills are fantastic.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I definitely can see some miniature painting techniques coming in here, which is cool. Can learn a lot from miniature painting, so fully on board with that. But I think the inner frame on this is fantastic. It really kind of the inside of the panels, how you can see that kind of bronzed look, and like on the back of those leg panels that are open there.
Yeah,
that's a good shot on one of them. That
up inside here,
really, really believable. Really looks like that kind of worn out metal and stuff. And yeah, like good work on not just painting the inner frame silver, right? Like you've actually gone and added it and sort of given it some life. But yeah, I really like this too. I think it's very cool, like good colors and stuff. But just just kind of missing that edge, that story that really kind of will get you, into kind of winning competitions. We talked a lot about it in the previous streams. Technique is one part of it. The story and kind of, the concept is always a huge part of any modeling competition, any kind of judging. So lacking a bit of that, but technique wise is very cool.
Yeah, really nice, really nice. Just vibrance and variation in the colors, isn't there? Like you were talking about earlier with the Dynamis, like how you have like a lot of different blues in here. It's not just one solid blue color, right?
Yeah, this works a lot. Yeah.
I like how this
is knocking on the door. So this is knocking on the door to the runner-up category. I think it almost was a top 10 for me for sure.
Yeah, I like how bright the like the verniers are painted so that they look like they're actually lit up. There's not an LED in there, but it looks like they're lit up.
Yeah, it's very believable too.
Yeah,
it's a cool piece. Really good stuff.
All right, Raisin here is up next with another Crossbone. All right, let me get this up here for you guys. Here we are. So some of the photos are quite dark, but there's a couple that are lighter, so let me focus on those.
There was a nice one in the clean side, wasn't there? The black and white.
Yeah, there was a couple. There was two really nice Crossbones. The other guys liked one more than the other. I actually kind of preferred the other one, but they were both very cool. Yeah. So yeah, some pretty good Crossbone representation in this contest. Yeah, but so this one, I mean, some of the photos are kind of dark, so it's a little bit hard to see in some of these. But Mike, you want to go first?
Okay. Yeah, I would say this feels like kind of that one comment we had earlier where you're a clean builder coming into weathering and you're learning those kinds of things, because the base stuff is really nicely done. The color scheme, the painting itself, some of the detail painting is clean and crisp and to a high level, which is nice to see. The actual weathering stuff, I think for me, when I see a lot of kind of this in the shading conversation of pre-shading and post-shading, where you take the panel lines and you've got these really dark breaks in between, and it kind of, in layman terms, kind of turns it into a quilt-like shape, where it kind of turns into like a pattern where you get these dark stripes that you're trying to showcase as kind of a, the panels are getting dirty and grimy and greasy and stuff. To that kind of a technique, I'm personally not a fan of as much, and I think what the reason is it just kind of doesn't happen this way, and that's one of the things. This is a great example because of the way the panel breaks are. Is study U.S. Navy modern jet aircraft weathering, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. How all the various panels, what's happening in between them, and then how that shading really actually happens for real. And you apply that into this situation, I think you'd have a much more effective result versus just kind of the heavy airbrush swipe down each panel with kind of a pre and post shade kind of a conversation, because it's very even-handed across the board. And again, you start to wonder, well, how is this actually really happening, which detracts from the piece. So it sounds, again, a little bit probably too negative, but the intention is to get you to think outside of that conversation and then push you into a little bit stronger area where the other skills will come forward, because you can paint really well. You show a lot of restraint in the chipping, which I think is nicely done for a silvery type chip on a dark color. So it's going to be studying weathering a little bit more and then practicing the techniques that'll expand you into a little bit more of a realistic presentation, I think would be helpful there.
Yeah, that was kind of going to be my comment. Like, that's a very traditional Gunpla painting style, more of a stylistic, which when you're going for weathering, stylistic doesn't kind of work. I mean, it can, but it's more about realistic. So, that type of painting technique, which is, been around forever, I guess. It probably doesn't do a lot for selling that kind of realism and that weathering. But that being said, I do like it. Like, I think it's a cool paint job. It's a cool build. Mm-hmm. But like for weathering comp, there's so much white space. There's so much potential for weathering on all those panels. That's kind of been missed. You've kind of missed a lot of opportunity to really bring it to life. But yeah.
I especially really like just this one little bit, the red bit on the inside of the color there, with that nice the shading there, that kind of almost sort of looks like a red glow on the inside of that color piece is cool. But yeah, I agree. I think do you agree with this, Mike, as you're talking about the shading? I think that the shading on the color parts looks so much nicer than the shading on the white.
It's mostly on the blue cape shield thing. I'm not sure what it's called. It's kind of that really heavy down the thick panel lines on that. This pose here, you can kind of see what I'm talking about. Like I think there's a chance here for you to, if you studied, I said the Navy stuff. The one thing I especially for space suits, my brain's going too many places. For space mobile suits that are strong, only in space kind of a thing, actually study SpaceX stuff. All the photos coming through Instagram on the returns of the boosters from SpaceX. They go up into space or barely into space once and then come back down. Like, look how messed up they already are and look what's going on with them. Study those for those machines that want to look weathered but aren't in like ground combat type situations. And that's kind of where I think like Navy jets, they're not dirty per se in terms of dirt and mud, but they're heavily weathered. So this is the kind of modeler who I think study those references a lot more and then pull that back into your work, because your skills are there. Your skills are fine. You're playing conservative and you're playing by the numbers, and you're probably in your own comfort zone. So I'm going to try to kick you out of your comfort zone to get you to the next level, because it's usually what has to happen is you have to get kind of the pedestal knocked from underneath you. And then, you have to float and tread water for a minute to figure out kind of like what you're doing. I think there's some skills. And this is an important one, because I think a lot of guys are in this kind of big bubble of you like playing in your comfort zone, but you really need to be kicked out of it to kind of advance to something a little bit next level, which could be cool. This is meant to be, you know, really constructive, even though I sound like an asshole. I'm not trying to be.
No.
Yeah.
Everybody gets it.
Yeah.
And just
because that's what happened to me. I mean, you have to get knocked in the head. I think you're in a really safe area with this one, and it's time that you stop playing in your safe zone.
Yeah. Did we do this?
What's that?
We did this one, didn't we?
I don't think so.
No,
We
we talked about this one a lot though.
Yeah,
we talked about this one, and we had the other. I think it was the X night.
Steven's coming up. Yeah, there's the other one. We're getting to the later. Yeah, we're starting to get some other ones we haven't talked about.
This is Richard's. Anyway, but now you got me wondering if we talk about this, Aaron. But
no, we haven't.
I think it's just that we talked about it a lot in our judging.
Yeah, we did.
I'm getting confused, but yeah.
Well, I'll go. So yeah, I really love this one. I had this in my top 10 of when I picked. There's some great photography, great color choice, and generally speaking, good technique overall. But there's some really standout parts on this as well, like that shoulder there. That's beautifully done. That sort of leg panel, the yellow there. So there's some really like skillful parts to it. We can definitely see that you know what you're doing. And I also like that you haven't just buried this thing in matte coat, like you've actually used the gloss of the paint and you've weathered it, you know, in a more of a real world sense. And that's why your colors, I think, are so rich and stuff. There are some things that we kind of did think were a little bit odd in terms of the grenade launchers look really clean. Maybe they just got replaced or something, I don't know, but they were just little things that jumped out of the narrative to me. And, you know, I think that some of the chipping, particularly in the center of the panels, I can just see it's a sponge, right? Like, you know, it's sort of, I know that we all know that that's how you're doing it and that's fine, but you've got areas where the illusion is perfect, right? It's hard to tell what it is there. Whereas some of that stuff just in the smack bang in the middle of those panels, you know, really sort of jumped out to me as you tapped it with a sponge there. And, you know, it's not quite as believable, yet other parts of your build are really believable. Awesome work on the decals and bringing them kind of into the scheme. They don't look like they're sitting on top of the kind of what you're doing. They're really part of it. And the textured metal too, that's pretty cool. But yeah, I really liked this one. I still do. I think it's awesome. Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, we talked about this one quite a bit, Richard. So we went back and forth on this one, primarily because I think what we're seeing is your basics are outstanding. Your painting, your skill sets, everything is outstanding. And I believe you're very experienced, or at least I'm interpreting that you're quite an experienced modeler, especially in the machine and Grieger world. What I'm seeing though, in terms of, I'm going to critique you for weathering to move you up the food chain, because this one should have been a lot higher place. It was kind of in my lower top 10 as well. It was in the runner-up category, but I think you've got the skills and the understanding and the mindset to really, really take it to the next level, the real next level. And what I'm going to tell you is that all your little faded streaks off all those little rivets, they're all kind of the same. And what I mean by that is you've kind of gone through and you've used your comfort skill set. And now what I want you to do is now you got to think. You got to think that every rivet is going to have a story. Like you have to get that minutia to really elevate your pieces to the next level. All 6 of those smoke discharges are identical. So you've got to really start to think through this now to really give your piece that little love, to give it a little bit more. And it's the same thing with the yellow, the shoulder, and then the thigh piece, those yellow ones that pop. You pull those apart and you put those side by side, they're weathered almost identical. And that's not like a negative. It's just now you need to really develop past your technique sets because they're very strong. So crawl into the world of, well, how is all that edge chipping under that cylinder on the hip getting so chipped when all the rest of it is identically chipped underneath? and start thinking about these things all the way through, because you've got the chipping all the way around the hatch edge. It's all the same intensity level all the way. And this is what we were talking about in the discussion, is that evenness starts to hurt you a little bit. So this is a goal to really push you to an upper level that I think if you really think about things on a really refined level, rivet count. Okay, this is a great comment. Rivet count the painting and weathering to the nth degree. And guys like you who love this stuff, you'll start to see it elevate through to where this is like all of a sudden it's like, holy shit, that's amazing. Where this is really good and I want to see, holy shit, that's amazing. That's kind of where we're talking about here. So it's because I think you've got all the skill sets in play. You really understand everything perfectly well. Your placements are fine. It's just the things aren't making a ton of like obvious sense to me. Like again, some of the chips, and that was kind of the discussion. It gets a little bit kicked down because it's too much of that intensity, and so that's kind of my comment on everything.
Yeah, I also think just to add to Mike, like execution on this is one of the highest, right? But again, it's missing that story, it's missing that impact, which I think, had you had kind of told us some story with it in terms of why is it like that, how did it end up like that, what's going on in its little world there, plucking it out of where it was in its life and then just presenting it like that would have really sent it home. And the C3PO was really evident of that, right? Like it told a little story, there was a more going on than just the highly proficient painting techniques,
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough to be critical on this level because I think this is to those of you wondering what like good weather. This is getting into the conversation. This is really good weathering. It's really effective. It's just very intense, and it just when you break it down, when you really study it, it's very safe in places. It's very like by the numbers. Like this is what a box art would look like from that world of stuff. So we see this but it just misses that the little extra, that little pickle the nuts, I like to say. You just need that sometimes because the sheens are beautiful. The texture is really nice. You can see the metal in this thing, which I love. So.
Just to be clear, Mike's talking about the machining Krieger. So I just wanted to make sure people were not confused. But,
oh yeah, sorry.
We were just talking about. Yeah, I've switched up on the screen already, but yes,
No, my bad. I get carried away. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'm just trying to make sure there's not so much gap between looking at the photos. So I just had this one queued up already for us. But this is the 30 minutes missions Alto Gundam kitbash here.
Yeah. Well,
go for it.
I think, like, given the size of it, it's quite small, physically small. So, always going to be a little bit more challenging to get it right. But I think this is a classic one of it's been painted and then just buried in a black wash and then maybe dry brushed to bring out all those edges again, which is, I guess it's a technique, but it's not going to give you that believable look in the end. But that being said, that is a definite technique that you need to hone and you need to go and get comfortable with. So that's great. But yeah, a lot of opportunity with all that white there, a lot of opportunity to kind of add in some other layers of weathering. Again, the gradient comment I'll make, it's just the whole thing's the same in terms of its intensity. It looks like it's just been literally dunked in a bucket of black wash and then let dry and then dry brush. So just be mindful of that. Like that sort of really sticks out and breaks the illusion. So
yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of opportunity here for you to continue with the weathering on this piece. This kind of this representation of where you're at with this stage of it, to me, I think you could probably start to play with it, turning it into a machine at this point in time. I like kind of, there's some sort of illustration style that you're playing with here. And this could be kind of, what Aaron's talking about with the dry brushing and the popping the highlights. It's a reverse of sometimes what we think happens in the real world, where we brush the paint in the corner and it goes brighter. Sometimes it actually goes the other way because the paint's actually fading, and then when you cut a fresh coat, it actually goes darker on the edges sometimes. So there's a little bit of some of that stuff happening. But I think for now, you're probably just kind of getting going. There's a very stylized element to this one that it's a little bit tough for us to judge from just pure weathering. It looks like a worn out machine, which is fine. And it's just going to start adding in the story and the life of this thing to really kind of bring it home. But I do like what you did with the 30-minute mission kit, because it's effective. You know, I think you're pretty clever here.
Mm. Yeah, and again, I think one of the only, if not the only, 30-minute missions kit in here, surprisingly enough. You'd have thought pretty good candidate, especially for weathering with all the different angles and everything on there. I know, Aaron, you've worked with him a lot. Where's Aaron? He's suddenly gone. Now that I'm just calling out to him. But yeah, I mean, I know Aaron's worked with those a lot, so I'm actually kind of surprised we didn't see some more of those. But
you zoom in and there's some stuff going on. There's some cool techniques going on. It's tough to kind of get a feel other than it's just an illustrative form of like a worn out, not pristine looking piece. So it was a little bit tough for us to figure out on certain places, but it's kind of cool.
It's definitely a unique style based on like all the different issues that we've seen. There's not many that are weathered in this way.
Yeah.
So surely stood out differently in that way. Here's Aaron back. Hey, Aaron.
Sorry, guys. Don't know what happened there.
Just right when you disappeared, I was just mentioning something about you. I was saying that it's interesting that we didn't have more 30 minutes missions submissions in the contest because they seem like pretty good candidates to weather up, and I know that you've worked with them quite a lot.
Yeah, I did a couple of good displays for can't remember what the show was now. It was probably about 2 years ago. But yeah, they're cool. There's really quick little easy builds, you know.
Sure.
Lot to work with there. Easy to modify. Very cool.
This one's a Roadrunner from Roadrunner. This Master Grade Zaku. Master Grade? Yeah, I think so. Isn't it? It's MG 2.0. I'm pretty sure. Aaron, I think you did the last one. Mike, start off?
Sure, no problem. I'll be quick on this one. This is probably it's going to fall in that kind of early days, kind of understanding weathering, and you're obviously taking a machine and you're trying to showcase that it's extraordinarily worn out over the course of its life, and that its base material is kind of an alloy, if you will. It's not a steel rusty thing, which is totally fine. It's going to fall in line of there's a lot of that dominant imagery in terms of like what you're doing with the chipping and stuff. It kind of just takes over the whole piece. So what happens with that is when you want to show something really extremely weathered like this, is it tends to be the focus of the model versus kind of the overall life of the machine and how did it kind of get here. And it's probably going to be the same conversation where we talk about it, just pulling yourself back in a little bit, restraining it, refining the storyline in an arc to why it looks like this for us, and then kind of start moving forward a little bit. There's some interesting stuff going on here. It's a lot of it, to be honest with you. So it's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, Aaron.
Yeah, I'll just agree. Like it's you know, a bit overcooked. Just too much of the silver or the aluminium kind of sponged over everything. Yeah, I mean, I know we talk about random, but this is kind of the other end of the scale where it's kind of just everywhere, you know. So
yeah,
it doesn't really do what you're wanting it to do in terms of you know, selling a weather technique. Also too, like you went to the trouble of going outside, getting some good lighting and stuff on it like that. But yeah, just be conscious of your background. I just find myself looking at the car in the background all the time and the weathering on the car. There's quite good weathering on the car. So
yeah, here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I would say also just as far as you know, he took some initiative in wanting to do a little bit of customization, like kind of adding this sort of like knife there on the forearm and like on the back of the legs and the back skirt there, also like a bit of maybe plot plate or something, some bits added down there. So good for wanting to try that. But just just look at loads of examples, lots of custom builds and stuff. Spend a lot of time on Twitter looking at different things that people are working on Instagram, just to kind of get some ideas about how to do that in ways that kind of fit the design a little bit more. Because I'm not sure the different modifications that he's made really fit with the design, but it's good to start trying that. Just needs to some practice and some exposure to kind of seeing what works and what doesn't work. All right. Ronnie is up next here.
Ronnie McRae.
Hang on. Oh no, what happened? Sorry.
Sure, we got a Mark II up.
Yeah. Opened the photos and then nothing happened.
It's not good. That's what she said.
Here we are. Look at. Sorry about that. There we are. So it's another one that was very lightly weathered. I almost kind of wonder if it's in the wrong category. Because it almost is like not really weathered at all, minus some shading on there for the most part.
Yeah, we can go quick on this one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll go. So yeah, like, and there's, again, with those colors, if you're going to commit to the darker sort of colors, you really need to then bring that weathering to life so that we can kind of see it and engage with it. You went to the trouble of kind of building a bit of a rudimentary photo box there, which is great, but you haven't then used the light to sort of showcase it. Like, I think in some parts that photo box is casting a shadow over your work, so just be conscious of that. That's kind of, the minute something's in shadow, we can't really see it in terms of get a good look at it. So angle that so that the light was coming more at it, and you would sort of fill that whole box with light as opposed to casting its own shadow. But just kind of something to think about. And yeah, again, like, it's barely weathered. I mean, there's a bit of a wash over some parts, but other than that, it's a little bit, I can't really see any other techniques, which kind of leads me to think it's maybe your first or second crack at doing something like this. So, lots of practice, be bold, get out there, make a few mistakes, and you then refine that technique.
Yeah. The box, I'm pretty sure, is just the kit box in the background. But and also I would bet that this is also spray can painted, and so that's why there's this mix of like the different, like the black and this light blue color and then this sort of metallic blue color. So it seems like a bit like the colors were selected based on just kind of what was available, and maybe not necessarily like choosing colors that were the ideal colors that you really wanted. You just kind of used what you could find. So the colors don't really mesh all that well, I think. And that's just kind of the situation that you kind of are in sometimes when you're relying on just painting by spray cans. So if you can, I would also look into getting an airbrush as well too. That will help with being able to get a much more wide range of colors, and you can mix colors and you have a lot better control over that. So that would be my advice on that one as well too. Ross is up next here with a Jester.
Zach, I was gonna say, just in interest of getting through all this stuff, maybe for the ones that we want to go a bit quicker on, maybe we only just Mike or myself give feedback, and then we skip on, unless unless you really want to add some feedback.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, because I mean, it's probably sure,
because we're sort of for some of it, we're just repeating what the other person says as well.
Totally. Sure. Yep. That works. So who wants to take this? Jester, Aaron, you keen?
Yep. Pretty cool. Like, very sort of striking looking build. I really like the contrast to the base against the model. I think it works. That sort of bright base really brings the kind of model to life, and it's an otherwise kind of darker dollar scheme on the model. So it was quite a good thing to pick. Usual stuff. It's kind of weathered the same all over. There's like literally chipping on every inch of it, and it's about the same over the whole thing. So we've spoken a lot about how that's a bit of a no-no, and think about your gradient of chipping and whatnot. It brings it much more believable. I think this one too is always going to be a bit more challenging because it's a darker color scheme initially. Quite hard to kind of showcase some of those techniques, but yeah, it's pretty good go. I'd say fairly early in your weathering journey. So just keep practicing, keep going at it. Yeah.
The LEDs are nice, nicely controlled. The visor LED and stuff. I think those are on. Yeah, there are lights on.
Yeah,
LEDs.
yeah.
Or is it paint? I can't tell if it's paint or not. Yeah, I don't have much to add on this one either. It's the strong pose. I do like the pose of that thing. It does work pretty well.
I agree. And yeah, while those darker colors may be a little bit harder to do your weathering on, the colors are quite nice for the mobile suit. They fit the Jester really well. So the
Who
choice
doesn't like a Jester? Who doesn't like a Jester?
I like the Jester, but it's one of those ones I just kind of have a hard time loving the Jester. I don't know why. I don't know.
Too many guns for me. It's another one is a gun here, is a gun there. It's got missile pods. It's the whole. It's kind of this probably gonna piss off everybody. It's kind of got that Macrossy vibe of just like weapons everywhere.
Yeah, it could be that. I don't know. I think also just kind of, yeah, it's got a really super cool design, but maybe it's just like the color of it. It's very dark, just kind of a little bit boring colors on it. Maybe if I just saw one in a color scheme that I liked more, maybe. I don't know. It's one that I just don't love as much as everyone else loves, it seems like. But all right, let's move on here to Ruben's little Zaku sort of vignette diorama here. Mike, you can go in and talk about this one.
Yeah, I grew up watching Iron Eagle, man. So your little shoulder hand painted that rings home. I do appreciate that. It's I don't know if that's what your crossover reference was at all, or if it was just that, but. I'm going to say probably similar comments here is probably very early days for you to weather a model, and then learning kind of what it is. And so there's some very restrained efforts, and it's almost maybe a skill set effort where you're not quite sure what to do and how to do it. But just super subtle little kind of details here. And this is kind of where you're just trying to represent the machine on a base and kind of just an application sense versus trying to compete on a weathering contest. So it's going to be probably for you of just early days, and then keep on the basics. There's a lot of scenes shown here, and some of the smaller details to finish off the model to a higher standard. It looks like it's hand painted, so that's always a challenge. So you did a good job there with that, and hand painting the logos. Props to you for even taking that on. And I think what is HD scale, so that's pretty small. Yeah. And it's just keep going and keep practicing, and you'll improve your game as you go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's great that the weathering, while not being like the strongest weathering, it is quite minimal. So as far as beginners go, I think what we see with a lot of beginners tend to overdo it. But as far as beginners, keeping it quite restrained for the weathering is definitely on the better side to be, I think. But yeah, just the painting, just the basic painting, needs some practice on that ahead of the weathering and all that, and then just practicing the weathering as well too. But
yeah, just keep going. Dozens more, my friend. Build an army.
All right, this one is Santiago.
We're in the S's. We're getting there, guys.
There you go. Yeah, we're getting closer. All right, Santiago's quite unique build here of the
some sort of Musha, something or another.
Yeah, but it's a.
Is it a Leo?
Yeah, it's based on a Leo. Yeah.
Okay.
But the head is using some other different parts. Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
No, like I'm a sucker for samurai or anything with that kind of inspiration. So I like that about it straight away. Appreciate all the extra work you've done on it. Again, red's a tricky color. Red's pretty hard to sort of get right. And I think too, like red against the gold for me, it just as soon as I see that, I just think Iron Man. So there's kind of got that connotation to it. So I know what you're going for, like based off that patch or whatever. Yeah, that I guess that's a patch or something that you've got there, which obviously was your inspiration. So full credit for taking an idea and bringing it to life. We go on a lot about idea and kind of that execution. So you've obviously seen that and thought, right, I'm going to do my own version of that. So awesome. But yeah, like with such a iconic color scheme like that, for me, it just jumps out as Iron Man whenever I see it. Some of the weathering's a bit haphazard. I think you can, maybe have a little bit more of a plan for your weathering in terms of, with such distinctive armor, thinking about how that would actually weather and what's the material it's made out of and things like that, making sure it sort of carries it off. And then again, just work a little bit on your photography. That would help. Pretty sure some of this is flash photography, which is a no-no. It always blows out your colors. It doesn't give us any detail. It just, it makes it hard to kind of get a good look at things. So always go for another light source as opposed to a flash.
And I would just say too, I would imagine this is probably something that Mike brings up a lot, is just that he probably ended up in a bit of a time crunch because he was doing quite a lot of work on this, just all the physical modifications, all these scratch built parts and things. So I think if you would have gone like full in on that aspect and then just skipped the weathering entirely and just kept this as a clean build, I think it would have been very cool. Or, cut back on some of the different physical modifications and stuff, the scratch built parts that he was making, and then spend some more time on the weathering. You could have done a little bit better here on this side as well too, but trying to take on both at once, I think was probably a lot to try to do with this build.
Yeah, you back yourself into a corner with that a little bit. And I think he was just excited and passionate and ready to rock and roll. And 2 months isn't enough time to get all of it done the way you probably want to. But yeah, just keep going, man. You got the enthusiasm for it. So practice.
You see some cool that style build, like the GBWC winner a few years ago was in that same style, right? The Japanese one. And he surely spent a whole lot more than just a couple months on that. He was probably working on that. I think it was like a year and a half or something. I think he said there was that cool video they did of him working on that. But anyway, here's another Leo, or at least part of a Leo.
Part of a Leo,
yeah, it's sort of almost sort of like Evangelion vibes, just by like how thin and lanky it is.
You take it, Mark?
Yeah,
sure. I would say with this one, the thing on this one for me was the scale of the effects kind of dominates the piece a little bit. I think the customization, the color seems nice. A strong white scheme, there's nothing wrong with that. I think the dark blue, navy, gray color is a good complement. It's standard, very pleasing scheme, but the weathering itself kind of overpowers the machine, if you will, which is weird. In an ironic way, this is a really worn out combat unit that's probably pretty powerful and obviously has a new head to go with his, his efforts here to stay alive, I think is what's going on. So there is story here that's good. We're seeing some things happen here. For me, it's the scale of everything. I think I can't tell if this is supposed to be repurposed into something that's maybe 10 meters tall, or if it's just a big ass machine that's got really huge damage on it. And to me, that kind of distracts from, I'd like to see you refine your stuff down, your battle damage, your kind of the marks, the scrapes and scratches. Just practice refining those down and being a little bit more precise, because I think you're a strong storyteller, that the techniques and your skills kind of have to catch up to the rest of what your brain's doing. And it's a little bit of the opposite of what we see almost, where I think you're strong in that aspect of it. And there's mood, there's motion here. There's something happening that I really like, but I think your skill set just needs a lot more work to really, really bring it home.
Yep.
That's kind of what,
Yeah, I also think this is again another one where it's a pretty cool concept. Just in terms of everything works pretty well together, and like you said, the colors as well too. I think the colors are great on this. It's really nice. You think it's just white, but it's a nice variation with the white and the off-white, and then the dark blue, kind of almost black. I'm sure it's probably midnight blue or something on there. It's really nice. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not a kaiju of some form. That's whatever's going on. It's what it looks like.
Yeah.
Godzilla attacked a little bit, and that's okay. And to the modeler, if he ever sees this, study the movies, guys. Some of those guys are hardcore professional weathers at a very high level. Like, study Pacific Rim and pause the screen and look at what they're doing on the machine. They do a really great job of toning in the weathering to match the scale enormity of what they're dealing with. Without being really garish and kind of cartoony, if that makes sense. So that's kind of where I think this modeler could really benefit from, just a lot more study and of that side of things. This could have been really, really cool, and we really liked it. So yeah.
Yeah, very cool. All right, Barbatos again up next, but with a twist. This time it's the SD. Here you go. SD cross silhouette, Barbatos Rex from Sean. So, yeah, Aaron, go ahead.
Yeah. Again, great little build. I actually think the chipping on this has done quite well in terms of it's sort of doing what we've said in that we've said, show some, reserve what you're doing a little bit, tone it down. But again, this one falls into the category of there's not that follow-up layers that go on top of it that really send it home. It's almost like perfectly clean, just with kind of some, chipping applied here and there. But I really think that you've shown that, that restraint with the chipping. If you just had to follow it up with kind of that more those sort of like discoloration and some light streaking and a bit of that sort of staining, it really would have popped there. And I think too, like where you have such a clean panel with all that chipping on it, like it starts to look like things on the surface as opposed to actually like it's chipped through to kind of the metal or the base coat or something like that. So just again, study those other techniques, those other layers that really help sort of sell it. But yeah, cool little thing. I like the claw mark in the sand there. You get the illusion that he's kind of been pushed back or something. So it's a nice little touch.
Yeah, that was just one thing that I wanted to add as well too. Is that I think is a nice pose with an SD. You don't have a lot of articulation to work with, but pulled off a pretty cool little dynamic pose of this as well too. Just the only thing about, and I do like the base as well too. Simple. You don't need like a bunch of rocks and plants and everything on there for this particular scene. It's just in the sand, and this nice little circle base is fine. But I would like to see if it was more in the sand, because it looks like just kind of on top of the sand there. So if you got the marks, make it so that you can actually have the claws in the sand and the toes in the sand a little bit, so it actually looks kind of
commit to it. Same with the feet. Yeah. The whole thing would have been pushed back, just not the hand. And so I think, you could. Yeah. This one's on its way to really cool shit, and I think it's just probably. I'm not sure if it's a skill or time frame thing for you, but this one, I actually like this one a lot too. I wanted to see. This is one of those I just want to see more, and it's just kind of where this one's at. It just looks like it needs a lot more to me, but definitely really cool. Strong pose, all that stuff.
All right. Next is, let's see. Hang on. Sorry, Steven. Yes, Steven. This is an interesting one. I want to get your guys. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think about this, because we didn't really talk about this one in the judging, because I don't think any of us selected this as like one of our top ones. But it looks like blood all over that, right? And I don't know if that's meant to look like that, or if that's just the weathering and just kind of meant to look rusty, but it ends up looking like it's covered in blood or something. But did you guys also think that when you saw this?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really know what the effect was. I wasn't sure whether or not that was a deliberate effect on it. So then I was looking like, oh, maybe that's how you've painted the panels with some type of patterning on it. And then I thought, oh, maybe the weathering's on that. But it's a bit hard to tell. I mean, I never really thought about the blood sort of thing. I mean, I guess it could be a stylized thing.
Like exposed muscles or something almost, no skin over the muscles, kind of a look. You see the sinews of the fibery kind of a effect. This was really hard for us to figure out what was going on. The photos outside in the shadow on the garden, it almost, this is the problem with camouflage stuff, is that it just disappears. It's really hard for us to get a feel for, outside of the fact you've got some mud on the feet. And I can't tell if you stuck that into the ground or if that was like, and I'm not saying that to be mean, it's just, that's its impression to us. So it's hard to kind of come up with what you're really, really trying to do. And this could be just experimental for you. And you're just kind of, you just threw this in the weathered side a little bit, because you can almost put this in the clean side, because you're just not really sure if it's weathered or clean or what it is. It's I don't have an answer for you. It looks like it's supposed to be heavily worn out, but I'm not sure if that's what he meant it to be. It's unique. It's definitely different.
Yeah, there's definitely some mud around there on the feet. And just the problem with all the photos, they're all like the same distance. I mean, if you look like the framing of these, they're all like the kit's like kind of here in the center, and you have a whole lot of background, a very busy background, and like whatever is done with the kit, it's also a very busy paint scheme. So yeah, it's like very blended in with the background here, and it's just not really close.
It's hard to tell if it is a camo scheme or not. It's a difficult, if it's like a super worn out thing. This is where it's the challenge. Like when we critique photos and why we think photos are it's an online photo contest, guys. It's really hard for us to see what's going on with this one, to get a fair feedback to you to really judge it properly. Kind of hinders us a little bit.
How I thought it looked like blood, as if it were like what he was trying to make it look like, just like a 6-7 foot tall robot, like samurai assassin, something like Kill Bill style, where it just bent through and just like slicing up a bunch of people, and it's just like splattered with blood all over it, kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Kind of looks like that, but yeah, again, if we can't really tell what's going on, then it's hard to know. All right, I think this is the last Machine Krieger one. So I think we only had 3. We've been through the other 2, so I think this is the last one. So
yeah, it's just Steven.
Here you go. Oh, there's Steven. Aaron.
Me? Yep. So yeah, another, like in terms of weathering, very strong techniques here. So there's a lot going on in this. Like there's a lot of layers that have been applied to this, and they've all been done really well. And then there's some extra stuff added on, like that armor plating and things like that, that's been added in very well as far as a technique. Maybe a little bit just sort of the splatter work on it is maybe just a little bit even over the whole thing, which kind of just, to me, it looks like it's just been sneezed at or something like that, like it's just the whole thing's splattered, which are a little bit off-putting. But the things that I guess let it down for me, the welding, like I really do appreciate the weld, like if you're adding in weld seams and things like that. But if you're going to commit and do that, they've got to be to scale. They've got to, that weld would be 10 centimeters thick, so there'd be a massive weld there. So just to be mindful of that, it sort of throws my eye off. And there's a shot within the cockpit, which the cockpit seems a little clean in comparison to how filthy the actual model is. But, if you really get in and start looking at some of the work on the front, there's I think there's a shot, Zach, where you can even see like little leaves and stuff just sitting on a level.
This one here.
Yeah, I think they're leaves, something like that, stick or debris anyway of some description. So that's awesome, really great touch. But again, everything's kind of got that white or silver sort of spotting or speckling over it, and it sort of just it breaks the illusion. You could have probably not even done that, Whereas down here, where it's like closer to the ground, it's all believable. It makes sense, right? Although I'm not sure that ground actually looks like it would produce that much splatter, but that probably being a bit picky. Overall, pretty cool, and you can definitely see that from a Mac build. You've got some Mac skills for sure.
If you're imagining like that if it's using these kind of thrusters to jump or whatever, and like when it's coming down, that thrust on the ground will be splattering up a bunch of kind of dirt and dust, whatever. So all that around there, yeah, like you said, I think that does make sense. Seems also to kind of maybe be relying on the weld to just hide the seams on there instead of just removing the seams normally, just weld over that, which, I mean, it doesn't seem like that would save you any time. Seems like that would almost be more work than just sanding the seams as normal.
Yeah, it could have been though that you're wanting to show off a technique that you're proficient at, and that's fine. But with everything, if you go overboard, it just becomes like you don't want to be like known as a one-trick pony sort of thing, right? Like here and there, it really adds something to it, but like everywhere it starts to be, oh yeah, there's more welding added here and stuff. And again, it's probably a little bit large for what it would be.
Yeah. Also, I mean, the Zimmer it added around on these panels, but on the knee, it looks like completely different a little bit. Almost looks like kind of the effect that people usually use for making it look like cloth, right? Not so much Zimmer, so it just seems like kind of a little bit oddly inconsistent for what the pattern is supposed to be with those parts, but
it's probably difficult on that rounded surface.
Sure, yeah.
I actually like on this one. My favorite photo of this one's without the front cover piece, and it's standing there with the cockpit kind of exposed and almost like an abandoned machining, like in the back of the yard of the depot, where it's just kind of there and it's used for spare parts. And I thought that piece, that there to me, if and I know that Steven knows this, is that if he'd taken that and really pushed all the elements out just from that one alone, without the whole front thing and the gun and everything, I think this would have been a really interesting piece just at that point. And then kind of dirty up the cockpit and really play, because there's some miniature painting going on with the leather in the seat, and if that had taken and gone to the extent it could have, and then this would have allowed him to focus his weathering on because I think the lower leg below the knee, this model really is really well done. I think below the knee it turned out really well. And the exhaust thing on the back, I think again is a lot of this one here on this model falls into. It looks kind of like the weathering was done one time as one application, and there's a ton of left on the table of not layering up stuff that you could have done. Like the exhaust stain. Make that look like that exhaust stain is 5 years old, where it's constantly going through this process of leaving that greasy stuff down the thing, and you've got a lot of areas to play with to really build this one up to because it's the very opposite of the other Mac kit in the show it was so heavily chipped, and that's what our conversation was about, where that one was in that particular style and this one's a very different kind of a style. So it was an interesting kind of bookend of the two kind of prominent techniques. So this was kind of cool, but I said the one pose I like was without the front cover. I was like, do that as an abandoned piece would have been really interesting to me, and then put the leads and stuff all in the seat, and you really, like a puddle of water in the thing, whatever. You could have fun with that.
Could have even had that whole front half of it just fallen on the ground and full
on the ground, yeah.
Stuff, that would have been like that real slice of life. It would have had some life to it then.
Yeah.
If I'm honest, that kind of when the hatch is open and the pose is kind of derpy, where it looks like it just wants to fall over a little bit. That's the one thing I don't like about that. I know Zach's a big thing in that too. Is the pose on this one kind of, I think, hurt me a little bit in terms of like I wanted it to. It's goofy looking with it kind of open, like I almost wanted it on the stand flying, like the box art.
That's just the ammo night, and the different variations of it are all just kind of awkward looking to me. It's not really my favorite Maschinen Krieger design, to be honest. All right, here. So this was our second place winner, TS. And so we can both say something a little bit about this, what we liked about it and all that. Mike, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah. This one to us, as a conversation piece, the painting, the colors, the faded tones in particular on the top. There's some color modulation going on, just from a technique standpoint of volume of feeling out the kind of Sakura shapes a little bit on this one. Really, really nicely done. Really hit home for most of us. I think we all like that aspect of this one, where that really pale pink. And this is box art. This is, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think this is custom. This is straight up out of the box to the box art. It's just kind of what this one was, and it just really weathered out, which was cool to see. And it really stuck for us, especially that the top. For me, my favorite pose was the photo was the one from above. The peachy kind of mango-y colors he's got in this pink, and that's what we're talking about, depth of color, where there's a lot of tones, but your eyes still read it as a pink and red machine. But when you break into the panels, there's a lot of tonal variations going on that really hits home. And as the volumes come down, the tones darken up. You can see the shape of the piece. So it looks to us, that's what we're kind of getting at with this. And this is a really high-level painting. And then the weathering on top, the dirtiness part, the grease, the grime was all where it should be. And it kind of reinforced the use of the machine without overbearingly taking over. And then the subtle 3 painted on the front was a nice touch. And then some of the gold highlights and trim pieces and the overall detailing and chipping on the scabbard for the sword and the exhaust, the rust. This is all very well done. In scale. Good, strong pose, the whole thing. Good photos, clean photos, the whole thing.
Yeah, I especially liked the kind of maroni burgundy color, like on the shoulders and whatnot. I think that's really well done, especially on the knees. Can you show the knees, Zach?
Yeah.
The knees really kind of, the way that you've really faded that paint up, right, where it would naturally be. It would naturally be faded there, but you've reinforced that kind of light and shadow to really make it pop. And again, like, even though this looks really dirty and overall, it is actually quite restrained in that it's just not over the entire thing. You've got a lot of asymmetry there, so it makes it a lot more believable. Good poses, good photography. But yeah, this is one that we really liked in terms of the fading of the paint. We talked a lot about how you really faded that paint well. You've done it believably, and then you've brought in those other layers of kind of washes and chipping to even accentuate that panel fading. So yeah, it's very cool. Very, very, very cool. And nice kind of simple, subtle, powerful poses too, which always helps for something like this.
Yeah, and I mean, and then just between this and the C-3PO, which were both, I think we all agreed, technically they were both really super well done technically, and it's just that the C-3PO had just that little bit of life that we've talked about a lot. I won't spend too much time going over that again, but that's what ultimately gave the C-3PO the edge over this, is that it just had that little bit more kind of character and life to it. But this one was just really, really super strong as well too. So. Definitely. All right.
Yeah,
Tanya.
Really like it.
Indeed. Tanya's Hama Hama. A kit you're pretty familiar with, Aaron?
Oh God. I'm getting flashbacks.
RE100 flashbacks. Here it comes. Yeah, I built this too myself, actually. I built one of these guys.
I built 3 of them in one go.
No, good on you, but no.
Again, like I'll take this one, Zach. What I will say is this kit has so much potential in terms of weathering, because it's got so many sharp edges and angles, and it can really, it can really kind of showcase some solid techniques. But I think what sort of let this down is I couldn't get a good look at it. Everything's a kind of a strange angle. Wasn't sure if I'm looking up the skirt there or if that's under a shoulder and things like that. So I had to spend a bit of time working it out. And then when I looked at just like the technique itself, there's some parts of it that are actually quite good. And other parts of it just look like they're not weathered at all. So I know we talked about, gradient a lot and not just weathering the entire thing. But, if some part of that machine is to an extent where it's got chip paint and it's really dirty and grimy and everything, like it's unlikely that other parts of it are going to be pristinely new, right? So unless that's the narrative you're trying to say, where parts of it have been repaired or replaced or something, but then you've got to make a point of showcasing that. So yeah, I know some of these photos are just so you could get in close and get a good look, but it's a bit hard unless you know that kit. I mean, I happen to know that kit really well, but if you didn't, you'd kind of wonder what you were looking at some of these shots. So just bear that in mind. Yeah, and maybe a little bit sort of too busy for the eye. I couldn't really like concentrate and just look in on the weathering side of things.
It's definitely a perfect example too of what you guys have been talking about, where that there's not a lot of just colors going on within the colors. You have this just plain block of painted plastic, then with just some weathering very clearly applied just on top of there. This is not that kind of variation to really make the weathering kind of look realistic, right?
Yeah, I'll be real quick with this one. Look at the instruction manual and the box art on this one, and then look at the presentation and the scale model. So Tanya, I know you're probably early days, and props to you for taking on a beast of this size. There's a couple things here. Time management. This is a huge kit. It's as big as a Sazabi in master grade. This is an enormous piece of plastic to paint and weather. One shoulder would take me a couple of months just to weather one of those shoulders. So you took on a lot. So look at the one we just showed, TS's Soccer Wars. That's a little guy like this big. And that's why he was able to get all that weathering in to that level in the 2-month period of time. So to me, a Hama is probably not the best choice, truthfully speak told. So it's not a huge criticism, but just for future type of stuff for that. And then you've got the best reference possible in the illustration box art in terms of how this machine would look as a space unit that's showing some wear and tear, and just use that as reference. A lot of people out there, I should have said this earlier, just sometimes these illustration guys that Bandai hires that really sell these kits, they do a wonderful job. Just look at those things as kind of a reference point if you're just kind of new to this whole thing, and just kind of replicate what you see and you'll be fine. So keep going. But yeah, Hama. Humana.
All right.
Beast.
Here we've got Tim's Ground Gundam, wasn't it? Yeah. Ground Gundam with Chemo. Here. Mike, you wanna go?
Yeah, he took on some camo. And this is probably the hard part of taking something iconic and then turn it into kind of a real world kind of a piece. The tough part in this one is that you've put a lot of effort into turning it in kind of a modern day sniper, if you will, with the camo and the ghillie suit and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. But the weathering, other than just kind of silver scratches on it, doesn't really reinforce the fact that, truth be told, snipers live their life in the weeds. And so that's going to affect the machine that is designed to be, as you've presented it, kind of down low in the dirt, hiding out as a sniper. So there's a lot of missed opportunities on this one in terms of dust and dirt and putting it in the real world scenario of what you're trying to portray. So it's a little bit hard for us to judge in terms of weathering per se, but it's good on you for taking this on and doing the ghillie suit and coming up with that. It's definitely, you're showing some passion to paint and mask, because that's a lot of paint. I'm pretty sure that's masked. If not, it might be hand painted.
No, it's
the camo pattern.
Yeah,
it's just digital camo masking. Yeah.
So I would say that's probably the hard part for this, is the weathering kind of doesn't come out of this piece versus all the other stuff you've done just dominates. So, with your scratching, again, like we've been talking about, practice your techniques, look at the real world and kind of start applying those onto the model, because it's probably early days in terms of that for you, kind of a conversation.
I like that first photo. It's got a bit of a Grim Reaper look,
Yeah.
Not sure if that's what you're going for, but yeah, that's what jumped out at me.
I'm sure that, you can imagine that's kind of the type of concept that he had in mind for us. So I mean, I think this ends up being a pretty cool photo of the kit, where I think the camo also is done, I think, just in like 2 colors, and I would have added in a 3rd color if you were going to go for that. Honestly, I usually don't like the look of digital camo in general anyway, but if you're going to go for it, adding in a 3rd color I think would have been good as well too. But yeah, some interesting stuff going on with the concept of that though. Yeah, let's add here. This one is Timothy's. What gives us Deathscythe? Yeah, that's right. Here you go.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, the dark color. I mean, this is as dark as you can probably get. I'm not sure if that's black or really dark gray. But it just makes that chipping really contrasty and sort of really kind of jumps out at you, and then you can't really tone it down with kind of washes and with staining and streaking and oil and all that sort of stuff. It's quite difficult to sort of do that. So maybe color choice is not best for a weathering comp. That being said, though, it looks like a fairly tidy build. I can't see any seam lines jumping out at me, so your build quality is good. Some of the photography is a little distracting. It's making it a bit challenging to get a good look at something like that. It's quite hard to sort of get anything from that.
It's the same like with the Astray we were just looking at before.
I was just thinking that.
Sorry, Aaron, anything else you want to say about that?
No. Look, I mean, I think so much of the feedback that we've given is, makes sense for this, and hopefully, to the modeler out there, they're kind of, it's ringing home for them as well. Like some of the feedback we've given, and going, oh yeah, that applies to mine as well. So,
sure. Yeah, and one thing that I will say, I did really like the color scheme they went with for this. I mean, the black's quite dark, but I mean, the black with the red accents is it's similar to the original color scheme, but I think it's an interesting change. It looks quite nice.
Yeah, the chips are also in scale. Like they are tidy and tight, and the marks and the scuffs and scrapes. There's not a ton of weathering on this one, to be truthful. So it's hard for us to get a sense of kind of what's happening with this. And but yeah, I think it's probably early days. A lot of the similar comments we've been talking about kind of evolved in that category.
Yeah. And certainly, again, just some closer up photos, less stuff going on in the background, just would make it easier for us to see and appreciate as well too. Definitely. All right, Zaku again up next here. A Zaku 1 in this case.
Zaku 1.
There we go.
Old school giant hand.
Yeah. Mike.
Yeah, I think this one, okay, so this is kind of in the similar idea that I think you're really going for an overall like worn out machine, and there's some nice tones to the darker brown rusty. It almost looks like steel metal cast textures a little bit happening here, which you're actually doing a really good job with that, and there's some really subtle dust. It's probably, I don't know if the sun's blowing it out and we're not seeing all the things that you've done a little bit, but I like the fact that you've attempted to kind of, it's not a pristine factory fresh clean, but it's also just not beat to shit and worn. It looks like a well-worn combat machine that's seen some things. So it's good. There's some good stuff happening here. I think there's probably at the point now of what you really want this to represent, and then like we've talked about a lot of just take some references and start applying and start building up the background of what this is and where it's going and all that stuff. But there's some good painting techniques in this one that kind of, the weathering's in the paint almost, with a little bit of the dust and the crevices is a nice subtle little low-key weathering operation on this one. Yeah, it looks like your first weather, which is fine. He's in the chat at Commodoro. So yeah, that's what I would say. Just keep going, my friend. I mean, you're just early days, brother.
Yeah, and I mean, I'll just say the kind of normal thing of just, master the basics as well first. Take plenty of time to make sure that those seams are totally gone. Even though it looks mostly gone, you need to kind of rescribe out that pen line there a little bit more sanding here at the forearm, and the same thing kind of with the lower legs. So just make sure you get rid of all that stuff before you get to painting. And then I'm gonna, again, this one I'm gonna assume is also done with spray can. So also look into getting yourself an airbrush as well too, to help with your painting journey as well. Make sure if you're gonna stick with doing some other stuff that you've got a good paint job underneath. That'll help.
Here's to many more.
Sure. Yes. Yeah. All right. This was an interesting one here from Travis, right? Travis, yep.
Yeah, so I think this was probably a bit of a better attempt at digital camo. Like it doesn't dominate, so you're still able to kind of add in those layers of weathering over it. I thought the huge big sort of shoulder bazooka gun, whatever the hell you want to call it, I thought that was pretty well done. Like that fading on where it says sort of Marines 03 and stuff, really like that. I want to turn the brightness up on all the photos a little bit dark. And there's hints of some really solid technique here, and I just don't feel like we could see it well enough.
Yeah.
And I just think, if you had to bump that exposure up a little bit, we would have been able to really connect with it and see it a lot better. Awesome thing with the LEDs. It's great and all, but they're obviously going to impact what we can then see in terms of on the model. So one shot with the LEDs is fine, but then bump up your contrast a bit, bump up your kind of exposure so we can get a good look at it. But yeah, it's a bit of a different style, I think, in terms of the weathering on it. It's not your traditional chipping, followed by washes. It's more of a overall dirtiness of the color. Which is a believable technique, and I think you've done a pretty good job of it.
Travis is here in the chat, so maybe he can settle this for us too. Travis, when I look at this, I think we've only really got kind of the one shot here that shows the full kit, which is fine. We can get the sense of that, and then there's plenty of close-ups, which is good as well too. But I look at this, and to me, it looks like it's sitting down. Is it meant to look like it's sitting down, or is it meant to look like it's floating in space? Just the pose to me looks like it's sitting down. But I think I was the only one that thought that, right? Because I mentioned that, and you guys.
Yeah, it's not standing full height. We knew that. You can see the thighs bent over, so we weren't sure. Probably supposed to be a space pose, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's probably what he was going for. But just to me, it also kind of looked like it's sitting on something. Yeah. Where if it's supposed to look like a. Also, maybe it's just because of the Marines vibe, so it's maybe meant to look like he's taking a break from combat, sitting down somewhere on a boulder or something.
Lazy jarheads.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, yeah, the hex camo patterning is really interestingly done. How it's got this kind of outline around it. So I think, like you guys are saying, I think if there's definitely some interesting stuff going on with the painting of this. So it's a interesting build, and it looks quite nicely painted. It's just a little bit hard to see that. And then here on the gun as well too.
I got the sense, Travis, that this is probably halfway done, to be truthful. It's a little bit like the Rex we saw a few streams ago. This is a massive amount of work that you've taken on for a contest. It's like the Hama Hama. It's like, dude, you're building a FAS for a weathering contest. There's so many surfaces to weather here, dude. I mean, it'd take you a month just to do the arm full justice. So truth be told, I respect the skills. I love the direction. You know what it looks like to me is those old Japanese illustrations of the Kondo versions of stuff where it's kind of like it's weathered in the paint, and it looks like from the 80s. Nothing's really standout weathering, but it just looks like a worn combat machine, which is an effective style. The photos the photos probably hurt you more than anything else, to be truthful. We had a really tough time kind of just seeing this one. So definitely work on that part of it for yourself. Your skills are on point. You know what you're doing, which is great. And I think realistically, 2 months isn't enough time to do this one justice. Like the gun upper part looks great. Like what we saw with the pink one. Again, remember that thing is like this big. It's this big. The dude could really put his time and effort into the whole thing. And here, I just feel like you're going to be, you're cutting yourself off at the nuts before you even really get going. Like if I'm honest on this one, like you're just getting going on the weathering, dude. Like you're just getting going because you can do so much to this thing. So keep going. Just on this one, just push this one down and don't worry about the contest framework anymore. Just push your skills on this one now that you've got time to breathe and do what you want on this, because I think you're knocking on the door, bud, of what this is all about.
It sounds like just there in the chat he mentioned that he's currently building the diorama for this. That's meant to look like it's stepping down. So it seems like maybe he kind of finished the kit well enough to get it entered into the contest, but it seems like he's not totally finished with it. So if you're still working on the diorama, maybe also take some time to, like Mike's saying, work on the weathering a little bit more, just kind of push it a little bit more. Now for this next one is a quite interesting one that we really had to think about this one, didn't we? This one is from Vince, and I also just want to mention before we get to talking about it too, is that Vince emailed me and wanted to resend some photos before we got to critiquing it, but unfortunately maybe I was late to reply to his email, or he's not checked his email, but he hasn't resent some photos. So sorry, Vince, if you're seeing this, sorry that we're getting to this before you're able to resend some more photos, but we're just going to unfortunately just stick with the photos that were originally sent for the contest for today. But this was a quite interesting one for us. So who wants to go?
A lot of discussion on this one, yeah.
Yeah, Mike, you want to go? I think you were the one that kind of really.
I was the champion, Vince. I'm your champion, brother. I thought this piece. The best way I describe this one, it would be, it's kind of, I keep picturing Terminator Salvation in the first encounter with the machines in the city. It's kind of it's post-apocalyptic. The world is gray. We've destroyed ourselves, which we're far away from doing anyway. So we kind of can feel. I thought for me when I saw this, like this is coming from that story arc of kind of video game, dystopian kind of just everything's kind of grayed out. And for me, I liked that. I thought that really worked here. The 30-minute missions that you've used and everything about it, it looks like a really worn out combat machine. And then you got the bright blue pink guns, and we didn't know what to do with that part, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's doing you any favors, if it's kind of a blued metal heat cycled laser beam kind of a gun. We weren't quite sure. So it kind of went down the road of, okay, that was awesome, but we weren't totally certain about it. But I love kind of your style. It's just kind of a messed up, hard working machine that's been around. Like it's either been sitting out for 100 years or it's just been doing this for decades of just destroying whatever it is that it's going for. So I liked it a lot personally. I fought for it.
Now, I think too, like we really do need to call out, it's a great kit bash as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's not just
very effective. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's a really believable kit bash in terms of it looks like a legit thing, Yeah. So I really did like that. For me, like I guess to sort of counter what Mike was saying, and this is why we had such a big discussion about it, was I sort of felt like it was a little bit all one tone, one shade, and I think that you could have like really worked with some of the what you had built into it to really sort of highlight and showcase different areas and just give a little bit more visual interest. When you zoom in on this and look at, a panel just on its own, it's really well done. Like your technique is fantastic. But I just think that, with such a cool little busy model there, you had opportunity to sort of maybe showcase and break up all of that, that kind of just greeny, browny effect that you've got. And then, we talked a lot about, was that heat staining on those cannons, or were they actually that color? Is it, it's sort of got a matte finish, so is it some weird space ceramic that goes that color? Like, we couldn't really figure it out, so we agreed that it was, it probably wasn't coming across as good as it should be, in terms of, if we have to debate it that much what it is, then the message isn't clear. So, if you had something in mind there, maybe just work on that technique a little bit so that you know it for the future.
Yep.
Be back in a sec, guys.
Sure. Yeah, this one, just to add one more thing, or just kind of reinstate that, is just that, because like what Aaron was saying, it is kind of just a bit of a wash of all one color. I think that's probably why, at least for me, this one didn't really jump out at me at first. And it was only kind of when we really looked at this again that I really started to like this a lot more, and really started to grow on me a lot more. Because just trying to imagine it like in the world, like Mike's saying, in like this post-apocalyptic, just like dusty, dirty kind of wasteland, that seems realistic, as that's how it would look. At least that's how we always see them in the movies and stuff. So like Aaron's saying, though, I think maybe a little bit something to give us some sort of pop here and there, because really the only kind of bright spot that we have to focus on is the cannon barrels, which, like he was just saying, which was kind of maybe the weakest point of the build. So you're kind of highlighting the weak point of that for us, where we weren't sure if it's heat staining or whatever. But yeah,
he's in chat now, so he's here. Yeah.
Like the guy said, yeah, I think it's a really cool kit bash. The design here is really cool, what you've done with that. So
Vince, I'd actually suggest, brother. Yeah, that is cool. There's some neat, your style stuff is really cool. Your visual style. I actually flipped this to a white background, go really crisp, pure white background, kind of like how I shoot my work. All the subtle stuff that you've got going on will come out just on its own. I think for me, the tone on tone is fighting you for judging your piece artistically for Instagram and stuff like that, social media posts. It's really cool style, but I think you would have benefited from a white background, actually, because it would have really lightened up the grayness of everything, which is what it's to be critiqued, negative sound. It just, everything's gray, and that's kind of where your subtle stuff that's in there that we know is in there, it's not coming to the forefront like it should, because you're doing some really cool stuff. And then, like I've said a few times, everything's very symmetrical. Left to right is very symmetrical. So don't worry about being so tight to left and right, and start to play with your story across the piece. Maybe it bashed the left side in somewhere, and there's entirely different weathering on one side. So don't fear that kind of stuff, and really push yourself, because I think you're onto something really cool, Vince. I really like this piece. I think we all kind of did at the end of the day. We really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the only reason we talked about it for as long as we did is because we all liked it, but we were just, we had some things that we wanted to call out about it. So it's a great piece.
Yeah, certainly. All right. This one is a Snowy Jim by Wesley. We're getting down towards the end here, guys. Just a handful left. So
I have to charge my headset.
I'll take this.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
Yeah, good little build. Some of the things that we've said, busy background, maybe don't have such a busy background. Appreciate that you've done some snow effects and some smoke effects and stuff. So that's cool. Great effort there. But yeah, some of that rust work and that chipping is out of scale. It sort of throws it off. So just be mindful of trying to reserve and bring that down a bit, tone it down a bit. And then the camo looks, I think, maybe brush painted or maybe masked. Masked. Yeah. So again, if you're going to do that sort of camo, that's very contrasty in terms of against the actual suit itself. So you're falling into, is that camo or is that like kind of tiger striping? Is that like a stylistic paint on it, or is that meant to be camo? So just be mindful of that. Like camo in the real world tends not to be so contrasty because it doesn't really do its job then, right? So take some cues from some real world machines, and but yeah, keep going. Like, you're probably a young modeler, and that's awesome. It's great that you're doing this sort of stuff. from the get-go. So, just keep at it, man. You'll get there.
What we need to see is, like one of the very first entries that we saw was the ground Gundam with the leg broken sitting in the snow with the beam saber melting the snow. And it had quite a lot of empty space on that diorama because it's quite large and the suit was kind of there in the middle. We need this kit put into that diorama with that for them to be in there together. Uh-oh. Is Mike also sounding weird to you, Aaron?
Yeah.
I think something wrong with your mic there, Mike.
We can't hear you, Mike.
I think he said something that he needed to charge something.
Oh, his AirPods? Yeah.
That could be it. There's then also, I want to go ahead and move on to the next one here probably, but there's still also that debate about how much snow would sit on top of an active mobile suit just because of the heat of the machine, especially if you have this smoke there on the gun, so it's meant to look like he maybe just recently fired the shotgun here, but then there's snow all over the machine, so he's just kind of been standing there for a long time and just shot the shotgun something. So it's just, as far as the realisticness of the snow on it, is something to consider. But again, I do, like you said, I like the fact that he tried snow. It's the only one in the contest, I think, really, aside from the other one I mentioned, that had any snow on it.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Yeah, and it's only through trying this stuff that you actually can hone your technique and get better at it. You can't do that unless you try.
Sure.
So good work to actually try.
Yeah, and I think the snow itself doesn't look that bad on it.
Oh, it's pretty good snow, actually. Yeah.
So, sorry, Mike, we still can't hear you very well. Something going on there with yours. You're sounding sort of like a weird 80s robot or something.
Yeah, like Max Headroom feedback. Maybe try rejoining, Mike. Drop off and rejoin.
Yeah. All right. In the meantime, Aaron, you want to take this? This was one, I thought was quite interesting. Had a lot of interesting stuff going on there. But this is what we were talking about before. Remember, we couldn't figure out what that was there. Oh, sorry, you can't see it. Let me add that to the screen. There you go. Now you know what I'm talking about. The other PG with this bit here on the leg that I couldn't figure out if that's like a decal or some sort of raised or engraved bit or something. It almost looks like it's raised, right? But
who is this?
This one is Wilson, Alinea.
Well, if you're in the chat, please put us out of our misery and tell us what that lettering is.
Yeah, Wilson, if you're here or if you're watching this later, commenting, we were really trying to figure out what this is on here because it doesn't really look like a decal. It looks like it's actually something raised on the part. Are you there with us, Mike?
You guys hear me okay?
Yeah,
that's better.
Okay.
Hey, Wilson is here in the chat, so let us know what this is on the thigh because we couldn't figure it out. It's probably a decal, I guess, but
oh yeah, we had that conversation. It looks like Archer dry transfers. What did you use, buddy? We were curious, my friend.
That's my custom decal. Okay.
So there you go. Okay. So that may be why it kind of looks, like in like your school textbooks, how it's printed, like with like the colors is like dotted. It kind of looks a little bit like that, maybe just from just like printed off. Anyway,
cool. So I'll start us off with the feedback. I really like the blue on this, like the blue, the fading and the kind of the multi-layer chipping on it with then some streaking. Like there's really solid techniques there. So great work there. But one thing that we kind of all, talked about this build was if you're going to expose the inner frame, then that's a massive commitment, right? Like to open a hatch and show us a bit of inner frame, that's one thing. But to remove all of the armor to show us that inner frame, it's a real kind of risky thing to do unless you plan on scratch building in something more believable than just showing where all the peg posts are and all that sort of stuff. So for me, I appreciate that it's all been painted in there and stuff, but there's no added detail in there, so there's not really anything to show off in the sense. So just be mindful of that. You could have probably left all that armor on and maybe just had one or two where the inner frame has actually got a lot of detail on it, and you really highlighted those areas, then removing kind of half of the suit. Because if you look online and you look around the world at sort of the modelers that do that frequently, that remove all that armor from half the suit, they painstakingly scratch build all of that inner frame stuff. You know, they bring that detail up so that it looks realistic. You know, so yeah, it's a bit of a risky thing to do that. Because if I look at the side that's got the armor on it, it's really well done. It's nice. It's cool colors. It's been quite well done. Really, really good example of a gradient, because like if you look at the feet, they're a completely different shade of that white because they're really stained, and then you can see it fade away to kind of more of the white up the leg and stuff. Now, admittedly, being a PG, you've got size to work with. But yeah, like, I just think you could have removed, 80% less of that armor and just showing off a few little bits here and there if that's kind of the look you were going for.
Oh, yeah. Mike, anything you want to add to?
Yeah, I'd say the commitment to weathering on this one, like a few of the other ones in this one, I gave you a lot of weight for the fact that you really, Wilson, you dived into faded paint, effective use of chipping, even though I would like you to switch out from a brush on your chips and try some other. You're probably getting hurt a little bit hand painting that, but it's all stylized, so it kind of still works really, really well. And I love that there's the visual appeal of this piece was really nice, even though I agree 100% with Aaron that it's risk reward. You got 2 months, you're trying to jam this in. This is a perfect grade, and you're trying to show off an inner frame. And good luck. It's like you've got a lot to deal with, but the weathering down low is beautiful. The feet weathering, the dirt, the grime, the grease, the believability of what you're doing is effective, and you're telling that story. And that's what we like to see across the board from some of the other contestants. I think probably just this was a time management kind of, you got pretty far, and it's props to you for that. I'd say realistically now you start to refine your style in your signature look, which I think you're developing here. This could be like a transitional piece for you. I'm never, obviously not knowing your other work, I don't know what you're capable of, but I would like to, you're one of those, I kind of want to see more. I want to see what you're doing, that whole kind of a thing in terms of what you do on a work basis. So really cool stuff overall. It was in our top 10 for a lot, and we had a lot of good discussion on this one and back and forth. And it's a good, grimy, dirty machine, and I like that part of it. It comes out the most. The rest is you bit off a lot. It was hard to finish. So.
Yeah, definitely really nice grime on it. Yeah, the blue, I mean, almost has a sort of like watercolor look to it, where it is kind of quite stylized in the coloring of it. I think that's what I really like about it. It's quite attractive to look at.
Yeah, it's a good looking piece.
Yeah, definitely.
Like that big flat panel there, just above the cockpit. Like that's a good example of where there's multi layers of chipping. There's there's all sort of different fading and different blues in the panel. There's the right amount of grime on that. You've incorporated the decal into that weathering well, right there. And if you just hone in on that one part, like that's really well done. The technique on that one part is excellent. So you've got some skills. Just man, keep going. You'll be like competition level in no time.
Yeah,
we really liked it.
Totally. All right, another Jester. One more Jester. A red one this time. Red Jester. So I gotta say, different color and still not really doing this same much for me. So maybe it's not about changing the color. But Mike, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, this one falls in line with the master grade Zaku 2 that we saw, that was blue and heavily silvered aluminum kind of what you're trying to showcase here with just the intensity of the red paint wearing off and how that would happen and all those kinds of things. I see some definite, like, you really want to, passionately show that this is a really, a big machine that fights in combat and all that kind of stuff. But right now it's early days for you. So it's going to be the same kind of comment of just restrain yourself, but practice a lot more and start to, practice your streaks with the rust that come out of the bullet holes to really refine that down into a believable shape. And then just keep moving forward, because obviously you really enjoy this, and it looked like you had a lot of fun with it. But again, it's probably a bit overpowering all the silver scratches. So just kind of keep that in mind and work through in your head how that happens in real life a little bit more, and put that into play going forward.
I think this entry might win the prize for the most different backgrounds.
Every photo is got a
different background.
Yeah. He's trying to find that just right garden piece.
So he took it to the park or whatever, kind of went around all over the place with this. So I mean,
his girlfriend was putting up with him,
Mm-hmm. Yes. But yeah, I mean, it's just a lot of the commentary that we've shared on a lot of things. It's kind of the same thing rings true for this, and Mike summed it up pretty well. So
moving on,
you can go on to Dane.
In the home stretch.
Yep, just the last few here. Dane's Zaku Kai. Sorry, let me get this up here.
Sit still.
My least favorite Zaku variant.
I've grown to agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's just ugly. I mean, look at that head. Not
Goofy,
not
it does have
Dane's
goofy
work on it
proportions.
here, but I mean, just the Zaku Kai design in general is ugly. But okay, Mike, take us away.
Okay, I would say, let's see. I think there's some good technique skills at play here. The chipping's restrained and in places very, very believable. So I'm thinking hairspray possibly. And then I like the restrained dust down low. This one, it's probably the only real criticism I have on this one is the techniques are really good. The strong color scheme and all that kind of stuff. Is just that maybe it's a little bit too conservative almost, and just probably just keep going and push the layers. Everything's kind of that similar commentary a little bit where we talked about. It's just like weathering happens in one little layering step. And truth is, there's a lot of depth of weathering. It's one single color here. Like look at Wilson's and all the different colors of blues and whites and dirt and earth tones that he was able to impart into that machine. And I think this one could benefit from a lot of that kind of visual style to kind of bring life to this one in particular, especially given its size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think there's a comment to be made on consistency here. Like if you look at that shield next to the bazooka, they just don't exist in the same scene. So be careful of that. I'm guessing that maybe an armor modeler, given that there are a lot of things that I would say come from armor and stuff. Tank traps.
Yeah, I know Dane's work. He does kind of a little bit of everything. So I think he does mostly Gunpla, but I think he has done some armor work and things as well too. Yeah.
So yeah, I actually think the chipping and stuff is pretty good. It's to scale. It's good, but yeah, just a bit of extra follow up there, and if you're going to beat it up, particularly the weapons, it's got to be consistent across them all.
Yeah. Right. And the same thing what we were talking about with the Barbatos as well too. I'd like to see the feet actually in the mud a bit more. If you're gonna have this into a vignette like that.
Especially when you think about how heavy these things are, right?
Sure.
They would be if they were real.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. Like what you guys were saying, just about the consistency of it. You have some areas where it looks like there was a lot more effort put into weathering this shield than other parts of the kit, and that could be down to time, or just wanted to really show that. I mean, it is a shield, so that's used for absorbing damage, right? But yeah, I think there's other areas that could also use some little bits here and there as well too. But welding, I think, is done better on this one compared to what we saw before. But also, I mean, that in scale, that would also be quite huge.
Yeah, massive.
That weld on there. Yeah. I guess like that'd be like a 2 foot or a 1.5 foot or something.
Yeah.
With that weld.
That sort of mold line running down the power cables off the
yeah, here on that face.
catching my eye, you know.
Sure. Yeah, all right. Isidro, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that correct at all, but we've got, I think this is maybe one last Crossbone here for us, or Crossbone Barbatos. So like a couple of the kits we've seen quite a lot of. It's a mix of both. It's a Crossbone Barbatos kitbash. I think Aaron, you're up first on this one. Or Aaron, you want to give some?
My headphones are dying. Go fast.
Okay. Yeah. So again, a bit busy on the eye. Like it's quite hard to sort of see what I'm looking at here, and I think it's just a bit overdone in parts. You know, I think you've tried to cram in a lot of build, a lot of technique, a lot of kind of things into this, which is fine, but yeah, you probably want to refine your technique before you go this crazy with the weathering. So yeah, this is a really classic. Tone it down a bit. But I do appreciate the little bits you've added there, like that. I'm pretty sure you've added that skull in the front there and things like that. So has a bit of comical value to it, so it's pretty cool. But,
not intentional, but it does almost look a bit like sort of like a chimpanzee skull or something of it, doesn't it?
Yeah, a bit of a Halloween-y vibe, so that's cool.
Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Little Tim Burton action.
Yeah, again, it's like I was saying with the Camphor and all the weapons, it just kind of, you could do with a lot less of this. Like Aaron's saying, there's a lot going on, so it's kind of hard to see what I'm looking at. You got all this going off on this side and all this going off on this side, and it's looking like very uncomfortably holding that massive gun in the left hand. So it just ends up looking very unnatural because there's just so much going on with the kit. Yeah. Sometimes less is more. All right, Zachary. And yeah, this was one we only had the one photo of, so I guess we can be quick on this one. I remember, I think he mentioned something in his email about why he sent only the one photo. I don't recall offhand, but we're near the end here, so we'll just try to wrap up these last few. So it's just this one. It's really all we have to go off on this one. Mike,
there's not going to be a ton to say. It's a little snow setting. It looks like you put most of your effort probably into the base, which is fine. I think you probably came into a time constraint with this one and biting off a little bit more. You could have probably just spent all your time on the sniper and not worry about the base at all, and have a little bit of kind of some wintry kind of effects on the machine for contest purposes. But and this probably falls into our previous comment about the large bases and a lot of open space. Trim that all up, cut that all down, reinforce it, and tighten it up around the centerpiece, which is the sniper. So, but a cool little thing, you just you're probably early days. You're really into this whole thing, which is awesome. So just keep going. And winter stuff's tough to do, but there's not a lot of weathering in terms of grease and grime, and we can't see anything beyond this simple photo. So, yeah, you just keep going, my friend.
What it also kind of looks like to me is, I'm sure it is probably supposed to be snow, but it also kind of looks like ash to me.
It could be.
Would have been good to have a few more photos, I think. That's
Yeah, it's a tough one. Makes it hard on us to give you good feedback.
All right. Z Coker, I'm going to say. Is that anyway? Z Coker. With this Giradoga. Here again.
Yep. Okay. So again, I think you've, at the cost of showing off the LEDs, you've maybe, lost kind of the brightness of the piece so that we could actually get a good look at it. because looking at what the areas we can see, your chipping and the weathering around it is actually quite good. It's to scale. It's quite restrained. All the things we've been talking about. I like that. There's a bit of a sheen to the paintwork. That's always pretty cool because in the real world, not everything's going to be buried in matte paint. So I think that's quite cool. Yeah, and it's quite low on the weathering scale. Like you haven't gone crazy with it. You've sort of kept a lot of the detail, but yeah, again, I just want to turn the brightness up so I can get a good look at some of these things.
Yeah. Some cool photos. Yeah, the weathering there's not a ton of it, but it does seem to be, again, like we've seen with a lot of them, kind of evenly spread over a lot of the kit, especially there on the shield. It's kind of along every edge of the shield, there's got kind of even amount of it everywhere on there.
Yeah.
The red accents, I think, are kind of nice. Go ahead, Mike.
Oh, I was just going to say I don't have a ton to add other than the fact that it looks fairly by the numbers. Pretty safe, conservative look. Like we said before, give us a couple LED photos and then give some nice lit photos. 7 to 8 really good lit photos, so we can just kind of see what you're doing, Zach. His name is also Zach too, Zach Coker. So Zach and Zach, give us better photos. Yeah, he's in chat. Okay. Yeah, you did. You went a little too drama happy, but that's okay. You know what's wrong with it in that regard.
No, yeah.
But it looks like you got some kind of classic weathering down low, dirt and stuff, and then the metal is in the heat staining on the weapons and stuff. So you're on your way, bud. You're on your way. Just keep pushing yourself.
Yep. And that will bring us to the last one.
Ooh.
Feeling good, guys. We made it. Tough road, but here we are. All right.
I never guessed it would take this long to go.
I know, but
when we sort of said it, we were like, "Yeah, just a bit of feedback about each one. Should be good. Knock it out in an hour show. It'll be cool."
You never would have guessed. And this is actually one that I at a glance, it actually looks quite nice. It's kind of interesting looking how kind of heavy it's looking, but I think when you get in close, it's maybe a bit messy with it. But Mike, you want to go?
Sure. Yeah, this a little bit like the Machine and Krieger one, where the edge chipping, it was kind of the dominant technique, so to speak. We get in the conversation with machines in terms of how is this starting to how does that really happen in the reality of machines? Are the panels, what's happening in these panels, that's what's happening to them physically. So you've got to think about that a little bit more, but the technique is in scale. The colors are strong. The black's probably not, again, red suits are probably one of the hardest ones to realistically do. It's why I didn't do red in my book. I just not going to do a red Sazabi to come out with a weathering thing. So it's the biggest of the challenges if you don't fundamentally understand red colors and what's going on with it. So you do take on a pretty strong challenge with the Sazabi in terms of cannon colors. But I like the streaks around the fuel tanks, that they're tight and they're sharp. It kind of gives you the scale feel. So good job for that, Jen, on that. And some of the little alterations in the colors you've done with the yellow and the little spot here and a little spot there. There's some nice little touches going on with this one. But I think just think it through a little bit more. It's not even like too much of anything. It's just really pull in believability into this now and how things are getting to that point in time when a panel is how does that happen? And that's what I'd like to see a little bit more of with this one, because I think you've got really good base skills here.
Yeah. Aaron.
Yeah, and like I think there's also a lot going on. Like there's a lot of photo etch on this. There's that all takes time, and I guess it's already a pretty time consuming kit. So from go to woe in 2 months, it's a big ask for Sazabi, right? With all that extra detail on it, but doesn't mean you can't do it. I'm just saying, like if it's a weathering comp, you want to make sure you're setting yourself up so that you're putting the predominant amount of effort into the weathering side of things and not just all through the build and things like that. I will say, like in terms of tackling red as a color to weather, you actually have done a fairly nice job. Like you've faded out that red to sort of lighten it up a bit, which helps immensely when you're kind of having to then bring other layers of weathering on there. So I think that's quite the base paintwork on it is quite good. I think this one also falls into the category of just it's sort of the same all over. Like it's quite heavily chipped and weathered all over. And this thing is massive in so-called real life. So I think it just sort of wouldn't be like that. But quite striking though. Like it does jump out at you initially, and then when you.
Sorry, I think did Aaron freeze right there?
Looking at it and thinking,
oh, there he is. Sorry, Aaron, you cut out for just a second. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Yeah, I just said when we start looking at and scrutinizing the weathering, that's probably what then brought it down the order a little bit.
Yeah, like this photo here in particular, it just looking at that, it's quite, interesting looking here. That really heavy look to it. Yeah. There we are. There we have it.
That's it. All right.
That is it. So
we did it.
I don't remember how many.
Three streams.
86. 86 entries. So,
right.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you guys are all satisfied. Those of you guys who entered, with hearing some good feedback. And seems like everyone that we've heard from so far all does seem very happy to get the feedback. So that's good.
No, it was a lot of fun. This was a good time. It was a challenge to us to do this and give everybody feedback. So that's what we wanted to do in this one, because it was brought up early days. Like, it'd be great to see feedback. So we took it on as a challenge and tried to really push it for you guys.
Yeah, it was good actually. It was good to actually have to think about it, whatever. So very cool.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Aaron and Mike, everybody, give them a big round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
No, thank you, Zach. This is on YouTube, buddy. You really put together a great contest. So
yeah.
Lead the charge.
Yeah, I think a lot of really good, useful information, shared from you guys for everyone. So that should be good for help people go along in the future. So, all right, guys. As far as the clean side, there's still a lot left. So I don't know if we're going to be able to finish those or not. Stay tuned for any updates on that. But I think we'll try to get through some more of those. But we'll let you guys know how that goes. But for now, thank you all for tuning in today. And we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah, we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye, guys.